Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Goldster Menopause Meet-up. This is a sofa-style chat show to engage and stimulate conversation about the menopause and beyond. Now, for those of you that don't know me, my name's Pycroft. I'm a presenter on Goldster. I'm also a psychotherapist, and I'm joined today by my wonderful co-host, Goldster presenter Susan Saunders, who is a health coach and author of the Age Well Plan and co-author of the Age Well Project, which is a best-selling book on longevity, which has been featured in the Guardian, Observer, and the Daily Mail. Susan, so great to see you. Thank you for joining.
Thanks so much for asking me, Lee. I'm really thrilled to be here. I really love talking about menopause, and actually my next book is on post-menopausal health. I'm literally putting the finishing touches to it this week, then it's going to the publisher. So I'm so deeply engaged with this subject at the moment. I'm really looking forward to talking about it.
Fantastic. I mean, I know, so we've spoken about your book, haven't you? And I thought it would be the perfect person to host this with me so that we can touch on some of the subjects that were raised when we did our theme on Menopause Week on the Goldster platform. And I don't know, we posted something, didn't we, Susan? What were the most challenging symptoms of the menopause? And did you see how many comments we got?
Yes, I did, Lee. It was absolutely overwhelming and heartbreaking in some ways, but there were 1,300 comments, which is just on one post. That's just extraordinary, and such a range of experience. Menopause is never the same for two people, and the range of experience and those kind of heartbreaking stories of relationships breaking up, having to give up jobs that you've had for love for decades, all that kind of thing is really tough. So anything we can do to share experiences, to talk about what we found that works, and to bring in some of the Goldster team to really help, I think is really important and really powerful.
Absolutely. I mean, I was totally moved by some of the honesty within those stories as well. I mean, I'm post-menopausal now, but I certainly have my challenges with the menopause. And I think that if we can come together as a community and share knowledge while help each other build a set of coping skills that can help move us through this transition, and that's great. So you were saying, Susan, before we introduced the menu for today, that in your findings, there were certain areas that we need to be aware of around movement. Tell me the other two.
Yeah, so I think there are three things we need to focus on, three areas of our lives to focus on. And that is, movement, as you say, mindset, really, really important we get our mindset right, because menopause messes with our minds. And meals, so you're getting our nutrition right, because that can help kind of support everything else that we're doing. And that's, that is so important. And I think those three things come together when we try and prioritize ourselves. We're at a stage of life when there's often very much going on. We're so busy looking after other people. We're possibly working very hard. We've got other calls on our time, and actually prioritizing ourselves so that we can work on those areas, work on our mindset, getting movement into our life, making sure our meals are right. Really, really important. So it's really great that you've got such a fantastic group of Goldster coaches,
presenters and the experts. So I think speaking to that, so I love the way you break that down in your up and coming book. And so we're going to intro who we've got joining us today and what you can learn from them. And then I thought, Susan, we could go into some of the comments that were posted, and you maybe speak with the knowledge you have that you've gained from all the research that you've recently done, and we can speak to some of those subjects before we get the next experts in. So we're going to start off with half an hour of Susan and I going back and forth. I will add in, sort of from a therapist point of view, some sort of possible coping skills that could help as we go through some of these comments. And then we're going to be joined at 2:30 by our fitness presenter and trainer, which is called Tim Harris. And we're going to talk about the power of resistance training for bone health.
Yes, absolutely. Resistance training, strength training through menopause and beyond is the magic bullet.
Yes. And I've got a whole load of thoughts on that because, we were talking about before. And at 3 p.m, we've got Jude Hirschheimer, who's going to talk about how Pilates can support you through the menopause and beyond. And I think this is really interesting, Susan, because one of the themes we ran on Goldster was pelvic floor and core challenge, and it got an awful lot of engagement because I think the pelvic floor is an area that we don't often talk about, you know, and some of the challenges that can happen with the menopause and beyond when the pelvic floor weakens and what that can lead to. And so Jude's very into women's health. She helps pre and postnatal women, menopausal and beyond. And she's got a whole load of knowledge that she's going to share with us. And then at 3:30, we have our nutritionist, Claudia Feuvre, she's very popular on Goldster, isn't she?
Yeah.
Claudia. And she's going to talk about balance your hormones and body through food, which I think is particularly relevant, don't you think?
Yeah, yes, absolutely, because it's having that sort of basis, that kind of foundation of good nutrition that makes such a huge difference to how we can cope with everything else. Because all the comments we're talking about, the 1,300 comments that we got about so many different symptoms and different experiences, but actually you're having that basis of good nutrition is really, really important.
Absolutely, fundamentals. And then we have a new person to the Goldster roster who will be a new face to you all, actually, for those of you that are members or those of you that are not. And that is Cathy Houghton, who is a health coach. She works with disordered eating as well. And she also coaches pre and post-menopausal. So we're going to talk about mindset, menopause and self-care. So I think that's going to be an interesting conversation. I'm excited to talk to Cathy as well, because you were saying the mindset piece.
Exactly. Yes, and it brings us back to that, the importance of mindset, the importance of prioritizing ourselves and getting our head in the right place to be able to put in place all these wonderful practices that we're going to be talking about.
Yes, totally. I think when we can have strategies and protocols to deal with the emotional component that goes with this particular transition, that can be very helpful. Because I think there are other factors involved, like we go through a physical transformation too often. You know, what happens to our physicality changes as we go through time. So that emotional component, I think, is particularly important as well. And then at 4:30, we log off. So that's 2.5 hour live stream. There we go. Yeah, so I hope you will use the comments, everybody. I'm sure you'll be popping in and out, but those of you that are here, do put your comments in. Tell us your stories. Let us know. Get involved in the conversation. Let us know as each expert comes on and as Susan and I carry on talking in a moment, what your experiences are, what's worked for you, what hasn't worked for you, what were your struggles, what were your wins. This is all about us coming together as a community and sharing our knowledge. So Susan, shall we go through some of the comments and maybe you can speak to some of them? Because one thing that stood out for me in these, 1,300 comments was on one post, and there were, I think, 600 to 800 on some others. But there were people talking about having symptoms to do with menopause, such as hot flushes, not being able to sleep, aching joints, the typical sort of menopause symptoms. But they were going on even though they were post-menopausal. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, yes. I mean, some symptoms of menopause do settle down for some women. For the majority of women, they will settle down. And for the majority of women, things like hot flushes and night sweats will settle. I think the average length of experience for those sort of symptoms is about 4.5 to 5 years. It's dependent on age and race and socioeconomic level and all sorts of things. But roughly we're looking at about 4.5, 5 years. So for the majority of women, that will settle down, but not for all women. And I have one-to-one clients in my coaching practice who are in their 70s, who are still having hot flushes, and that's certainly the experience of people who responded to the Goldster questions. And it's essentially when the hormones go, you don't get them back. Some things settle and some things don't, and it really depends on our individual experience. But certainly night sweats, insomnia, brain fog, they can hang around for a long time, and that's really debilitating.
So tell me a bit about what's happening with, is it the drop in estrogen that's the main component to this? Can you speak a little bit about the sort of hormonal component to this.
Yeah. So we have three main reproductive hormones:
Mm.
estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. They all work together. And I say the biggest learning for me about menopause was to realize that they are not just reproductive hormones. We have receptors for those hormones all over our bodies, and estrogen in particular is like this lovely, warm, fluffy blanket that Mother Nature wraps us up in to keep us safe. And it keeps our bones strong and our hearts healthy and our brains functioning well. And it also gives us periods and babies, essentially.
I
But
love that
Mother Nature,
protective blanket. It's like a
yeah,
protective cloak.
yeah. Mother Nature wants to keep us nice and safe while we're able to reproduce the species, essentially, and procreate. And once we lose that ability, when we've run out of eggs, then Mother Nature takes that cloak away and says, "Okay, honey, you're on your own now."
Great.
So that's what it is. I mean, that's to tell you, this is my analogy, but essentially that is what it is. That we've lost that protection that kept our joints lubricated and helped us sleep and all those things. It's gone. So we have to work harder on those things ourselves, and we have to work our way through our body's response to not having that lovely comfy blanket anymore, because our body's going to start reacting. It's like, where's it gone? What am I doing? How do I cope? So that's what's happening in our body as our hormones decline. So during perimenopause, before our final period, we get surges and dips in those hormones, which is why we get that sort of horrendous roller coaster of emotions and symptoms. And then within a year or so of our final period, things start to level out. But they're leveling out at a low level, unless you're an HRT, which is a different matter. But they're leveling out at a low level, so that they're not coming back, and our bodies need to readjust to this new normal, and work out how we manage and how we cope, and finding a way through that.
And so some of the other comments that were coming up, were things like gaining weight around the middle. Someone here was saying, I've always been a size 8, now I've gone up to a size 14. She said, I feel very depressed about it. Another person saying, I'm losing sleep, I'd collapse with exhaustion, but less than 2 hours later I'd be awake and unable to sleep. All of this is due to these hormonal fluctuations. Comments here, how my body's changed in the last couple of years. I've lost so much elasticity in my skin. I always wonder what happened to bodies as we go through time. Now I know. I'm having to come to terms with this. It's really emotive.
It is that coming to terms is really, really difficult. And I know for you, as having worked as a makeup artist and now as a psychotherapist, you must be very engaged with this idea of how our looks change and how our perceptions of our bodies change. That's a really big topic for a lot of women. I think how you feel about that and what you see in your practice.
I think it's a really interesting one, because let us know in the comments, because I think it's an area that a lot of women I know don't want to care about, or they feel it's superficial to care, yet they do. And I think that depending on how you have used your appearance, because I think that our appearance is all part of our self-image and identity. How we choose to dress, how we choose to look after ourselves will reflect in our skin, in our hair, in the way we put ourselves together each day. And I think that if you've used your looks as currency too much, then it can be a steeper transition than, say, we've had this conversation, haven't we, Susan, where I think as females the looks as currency part has played a role. But you always see, we're not in school and girls are taught to use their brains more. Certain cultures will do that more, I think. But I know certain, especially in my demographic, where we were trading on the way we looked more than anything. And it was only as I sort of went through time that I thought, actually, learning things is something that you can never have taken away from you. Either the way we look and the way our bodies are will transition and change through time. That is just a fact of life, right? And we have to be able to have the emotional flexibility to be able to adapt to those changes and see it as more of an expansive view of our value and worthiness beyond, what we might initially think is our value and worthiness. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. But I think it's very hard. Women start to feel invisible. I was looking at one of the comments from our 1300 comments, feeling like you've completely lost yourself. Just that sort of sense of, well, who am I now? Everything's changing. I don't know my own brain. I don't know what it's doing. That is very hard when coupled with everything else, with sleep deprivation, with looking different. That all comes together, and it's a very difficult thing to process. And I think the only way we can do that is in very, very small incremental steps.
That is a very key point. That's a really key point, Susan, I think, because we often we're sold big transformations a lot in the world. But I think when we can break it down to incremental steps, it becomes more manageable and achievable, doesn't it? Yeah. And then it's sort of expanding our perspective on what our value is. And rather than this stage of transition being where there's a loss of some kind, we're not, we can't, maybe have any more children, maybe children have left home. That's certainly the case when my son left home. It was this sort of sudden, gosh, there's this huge change. Both parents have now passed away, and it happened, my father passed away, and then my son left home quite quickly, and there was this sudden change. I was like, gosh, I'm in this life phase, and I'm post-menopausal. Do you know what I mean? So it's like in that space of uncertainty is also a space for creation.
Yes.
And it's being able, that mindset piece you're talking about, which we'll go into a bit more later. But I think that when you were saying about losing sleep on top of the physical changes that are happening and the peaks of anxiety and the cortisol levels, which will be higher, one thing feeds into another. With the heightened anxiety, which of course is emotional arousal, we can't think clearly. It's harder to see a broader perspective. What are your thoughts on the anxiety part, which came up so many times in the comments? This heightened anxiety. What were your findings on that and your thoughts on that?
Well, I think as you just alluded to, it's not. This is not simply about hormones. There are so much going on in women's lives at the same time. We might have reached a peak in our career, we might have been made redundant, we might be caring for losing parents, might have teenagers at home who are struggling for different reasons, we might have an empty nest. All sorts of things are happening at the same time as we have this hormonal decline, and it's like the sting in the tail. When we most need that hormonal support, it's ripped away from us. So I think that's really hard, and I think we shouldn't just say it's your hormones, because it's a much bigger thing than that. But the hormones do play a really, really vital role, and there are estrogen and progesterone receptors in the parts of our brain which are linked to fear. So we become much more fearful. And I found that on a really practical level, that I now have terrible vertigo. I'm awful with heights, awful with scary films. Just can't do it. I mean, they're sort of silly examples, but actually, it's sort of extrapolating from that, your general anxiety about life, about what's happening. If that, again, that sort of protective cloak that was wrapping up the fear part of your brain and keeping that feeling safe, that's gone. So you are going to feel more fearful. And I think actually just being aware of the practicalities of what's happening in our brain really helps, because then you start to go, well, this isn't actually me. This is some weird thing that's happening in a section of my brain. I think it's the amygdala, that's suddenly not protected anymore. So it's not that the world is going to end or something awful is going to happen in my life. It is a biological process that's playing out in my brain. And when we start to see our thoughts and our anxious thoughts in that context, we start to get a little bit of distance from them. And in my Karma Life course on Goldster, I talk a lot about trying to prise open some distance from our thoughts, our negative thoughts, and look at them as separate entities and examine them.
Mm,
And once we can start to do that, they just start to make a little bit more sense, and particularly when we sit in the context of what's happening biologically.
yeah, yeah. And I think from a sort of therapy perspective, you talk about the point of when there's so many other things going on in our life which can cause a sort of stress response or reaction to that, right? And of course, when we are in an agitated, fight or flight state, then it makes dealing with other things that bit harder. And I always sort of come back, the therapy approach I use is called the Human Givens approach. It's very much based on, emotional needs and what do we need as an organism to thrive. What do we need in our environment? What emotional needs do we need to get met? And what's blocking us from getting those met? And I think that when we can sort of have protocols, and that's why these conversations are so brilliant, because women who are younger, about to hit the menopause, will have all of this out in the open for them, whereas perhaps my generation didn't. It's only just now these conversations are happening. When we can understand about, managing stress, understanding how to get our emotional needs met for connection, for safety and security, for autonomy and control. And when you talk about anxiety, it helps us, it creates a feeling of not being safe, right? And so what will help you the most feel safe when those anxious feelings come up? What could you have in your emotional toolkit that will help you calm things down? Because when the emotional arousal is lowered, then it's much easier to get that perspective on our thoughts, isn't it? I think,
Yeah.
is I think a really key point. And that's having those things in your toolkit that will help just noticing the signs in the body of I'm feeling agitated, whether it's anxiety in your belly, you feel it in your throat or your head, or wherever it is. It's breathing, walking, moving to lower that arousal, and then starting to tackle the thought processes. So I'm going to read some comments here, actually, Susan. Just let's see. Geese is just saying, I have to go out shortly and look forward to hearing the recording. Could you let us know how the male menopause compares to female menopause, please? Have you got any thoughts on that?
Do you know what? I don't know anything about the male menopause. I haven't looked. I'm so focused on the female menopause.
Mm.
I think I think what happens is women's hormones kind of go off a cliff edge, and men's decline very, very, very gently over a very long time. And certainly when it comes to something like brain health, and we're looking at the use of energy in the brain, with women, as the hormones go, the use of energy in the brain dips very, very quickly, whereas with men you can see that use of energy going with the hormones very, very slowly. So I think it's a very different experience.
Yeah. And someone was just saying, 66, can't get my head around my skin condition, not so much on my face, but my arms and legs, so depressing. So Nicola, I'd be really interested to know what skin condition that is and what you're referring to. Is it very dry skin? Is your skin gone slightly scaly? This can often happen as the estrogen levels drop. Our skin becomes a lot more dry and sensitized. Often a common complaint is below the knees, that part of where the calves are, become incredibly dry. And certainly sort of with my makeup artist hat on, really having a skincare routine that can help make sure the skin is well exfoliated, but with more chemical exfoliants, natural exfoliants rather than physical ones, which can sort of be slightly abrasive to the skin, can be very helpful. Making sure you're nourishing it and you've got the skin barrier function is looked after with the right ingredients, like shea butter, for example, is really good. Do let us know in the comments, though, what skin condition you're referring to, and we'll see if we can help any more. Anna just saying, I've got terrible acne for the first time in my life. And Anna, that can also happen as the hormones fluctuate through the menopause. Are you trying anything, Anna, for your skin? Have you been having any treatment for it? Often depending on the severity of the acne, there are treatments that can help with that. As a starting point, I don't know if you use salicylic acid, which actually comes from aspirin, but it's a oil-soluble exfoliant liquid that can actually, the molecule size helps go down into the pores of your skin to dissolve any sebum help unclog them. So that can be very helpful, depending on how severe the acne is. Also, Kate's just saying, I've been diagnosed with lupus, but doctors are confused because I've started to have hot flushes, dry skin on my hands, fingers, I'm moody, and my periods have stopped, and I feel very, very tired. Have you got any thoughts on that for Kate, Susan, from any... obviously, we can't speak from a medical point of view, but I know you spoke to a lot of doctors through your book as well.
I think what I don't know is how old Kate is, whether this is these menopause symptoms that have come early or whether they've come late after menopause or around the same time. But yeah, as you say, I can't talk about individual medical conditions, but generally anything that we're suffering from, or if we start to suffer from, is going to be exacerbated by everything that's going on in our bodies in the menopause, because we're on the middle of this enormous change. And I think that's the other thing to remember. Of course, we're talking about menopause today, but it is a time of enormous change in our bodies anyway, and we are getting older. We're at least at the middle of our lives. We are getting older. Things are responding to the stresses and strains of life a bit more, and so we are likely, this is when we are likely to start getting chronic conditions, so autoimmune conditions like lupus. You fall into that category.
So Kate's 52.
So classic sort of menopause age. Symptoms are kicking off, and you've got a chronic condition that is being exacerbated by and also exacerbating those symptoms. So yeah, it's just unfortunately a kind of a double whammy. But your doctor should really be able to help. And if you're not happy with the support you're getting, ask for a referral.
Yeah, 100%. And Anna was just saying she's actually on a benzoyl peroxide gel prescription, which can be helpful for acne. And then of course there's things like tretinoin, which your doctor will know, but if you're under your GP, then they should be able to help with that. But tretinoin is a vitamin A derivative, which can be helpful with skin conditions like acne. But you're under your doctor, Anna. But the other thing, do you use any makeup on it? And remembering that there's a temporary factor to these things. If something's been brought on by this transition, it's being able to know that this is a period of time, but I totally hear what you're saying there, Anna, and I wish you luck with your doctor as well. I'm just seeing any more comments here. Let's just have a little look. No, we've got all those comments at the moment. Oh, you just hear it's just as hard if we've relied on our brains as currency when brain fog sets in. Kerry, absolutely. And I think that we all rely on our brains, especially through time. And I think the brain fog part is a huge part. And you actually gave some wonderful tips for brain fog, didn't you, Susan? In terms of our brain loves novelty.
Yes, exactly. Yes, one thing I would say with brain fog is, well, two things actually. One is to remember that it is temporary. Our brain is going through this enormous transition, and the way our brain uses energy and the amount of energy that it uses is changing very rapidly, and that is what triggers brain fog, and that does settle down. And the other really important thing to know is it's not a symptom or a sign of early onset dementia, or that you're more likely to get dementia, that it's the start of Alzheimer's, because we feel like that's what it is, but that really isn't. And I think actually reducing that worry is really important. But yeah, when it comes to actually thinking about brain fog, things like prioritizing sleep, because we have this sort of horrible vicious circle of not sleeping, and so we have brain fog, and then we get stressed, so that gives us more night sweats, and then we don't sleep, and it's really horrible, and then we get more brain fog. So anything we can do to prioritize sleep, optimize sleep quality, really, really important.
Yes, absolutely. And we will talk more about that, but we actually now at 2:30 have our first guest. And our first guest is fitness trainer Tim Harris. Now, hello, Tim. Hello, welcome.
Hello. Hi, Susan. Hello.
Hi.
Great to see you. I'm just going to let everyone know who you are, Tim. So Tim Harris has 7 years experience in the fitness industry, working in elite London members clubs with a range of clients from 30 to 80 years old. Tim specialises in weight and resistance training and believes that this is an area of fitness that is often, as he says, wildly misunderstood. He says that the long-term benefits of weight training include building skeletal muscle, which is essential in menopause, as this is when it can dramatically decline. And you were saying, Susan, weren't you, that actually resistance training is one of the silver bullets. Tim, thank you so much for joining us. We'd love to hear why you think weight training is wildly misunderstood.
Sure. Well, yeah, like Susan said already, it is that bit of a silver bullet. Over the last particularly 6 years, training many women who were in that pre, mid, and post-menopausal stages benefited hugely, not just from the exercise, but just physically beginning to get stronger. As some of you may already know, when you're going through the menopause, a lot of your hormone levels change.
Oh, Tim's disappeared for a moment there. I'm sure he will come back. Are you still with us, Susan?
I'm still here. Yeah, I'm still here.
It's so far chat and all that can happen online.
Yeah, exactly. Because as we were just saying, it is so important to think about strength training and muscle. And as Tim was about to say, we lose our hormones, which impact our we lose our reproductive hormones, and that has a real impact on our muscles and our bones, because we have receptors for estrogen in particular throughout our bodies, and bones and muscles are particularly affected. We also lose growth factor from our muscles, so it's harder to build muscle, and we lose muscle more quickly. Our percentage of body lean muscle declines.
Aren't you glad you joined this show, everybody?
but what we've got to keep saying, Lee, is there are things we can do. We can look after ourselves. We can deal with this. It's just we have to have the knowledge. We have to understand what's happening. So if it sounds depressing, it's okay. It's not great, but there's so much we can do, and that's what we have to keep remembering. And so many great people like Tim, when he comes back, who can help and have a wealth of knowledge.
And that makes such a relevant point, though, Susan, because it's normalising all of this. Because I think that the issue being, and it's interesting because some people have sort of said in the comments, well, I got through the menopause, I don't know what the fuss is about. But I think speaking about these things so that people don't have to just struggle through is the key, and to sort of know that actually I found, I've always done weight training because I love it. But I just found, God, it's so much harder for me to build muscle. But actually, Tim is my trainer. And since he sort of got me on this regime, I'm building it because I know what to do and how to do it and how often to do it, and what types of exercise to do and what weight to do and how to progress it for being postmenopausal. And also the amount of protein I have to eat for my body weight in order to help, and the right kinds of foods to eat. So all of these things combined have helped me all of a sudden start to build muscle in a way that, I was finding much harder. Hey, Tim, you're back. Great to see you.
So sorry, I'm not sure what happened there, and I'm not sure how much of me blabbering on got taken in, or if I got cut off from the get-go.
You said the hormone levels change, and then
hormone levels.
You flew out.
That's it. Hormone levels change. Everyone's all right about that. Yeah, hormone levels change. Estrogen declines as well as other hormones, and so what we have to do is women have to teach their bodies how to become more efficient again. Okay, so sort of pre-menopause, when it comes to energy, muscle building, we have all of the tools ready, and our muscles can essentially build much easier. Post-menopause and during, that all changes, and so what we need to do is softly start again. That's the best way I can just describe it, as just trying to, without putting too much stress on yourself, start reintroducing weight training and things like high intensity, which I know is very widely spoken about, but it is a very, very good way of leveling out how you might feel within the body. And it's, from my point of view, it's one of the best tools. I know that there are all sorts of things that can be given and prescribed by doctors, and they are, I'm sure they're very, very good. However, this one is essentially one of the cheapest or free ones if you're working out in your own home. And it is a very great start into building what is also going to be a very important building block as we get older. That's male and female as well.
I was just saying, actually, when you were popped out of the room, that you're my trainer, actually, and I've always been into weight training, but the ability to build muscle really slowed down as we got old, as I've got older, and I'm 57 now, so I'm post-menopausal. But actually, knowing the routine that you've given me and you've broken it down into small, achievable bits of workouts that I can do each day that fit in with my schedule, that, already I'm sort of feeling I'm getting to more of a rhythm, and the food and how much food I'm supposed to eat and how much protein I have to have, my body weight. And so you're sort of giving me a library so that I can work towards making the gains that I would like, That's
it. And one of the most difficult things, and this is for any sex, any age, is just knowing what you're meant to be doing. It's particularly when it comes to building muscle, worldwide, unless you are a fitness fanatic, protein intake, huge building block of how we get stronger. And it is, really misunderstood across the board. And what makes it quite difficult, pre and post-menopausal, is that the way that your bodies use protein becomes less efficient. So what I was saying earlier about teaching your body to be more efficient is you need to teach your muscles how to be more insulin and protein efficient.
Oh, interesting.
And that starts with light weights. It doesn't have, I'm not expecting people to be, lugging around huge weights in the back. You can use body weight. You can literally use a can of beans in each hand. It doesn't have to be rocket science or crazy weight, but it is just putting your muscles under light stress for 30 minutes. I say a day. We're probably doing 3 times a week, perhaps. Is a good place to start, and it is, like I said, a very good way of reteaching your body how to do things from the inside.
Yeah. Our muscles are so important. So interesting you mentioned protein and how we have to reteach our bodies to use protein, and also glucose. I'm fascinated by how muscle soaks up glucose and helps level out our metabolism, because metabolism just goes crazy during menopause, as you know. And so muscle is this fantastic tool we can use to help deal with that, to help soak up glucose. Is that something that you find that you help your clients work with?
100%, because if our muscles aren't using the glucose, where is it going? Tummies, hips. And that's, broadly that's male and female, but as many women know, during and after, that's where they find it sitting. So this is one of the things that, particularly from a sort of visual point of view, if ladies want to lose that sort of weight, it's not about sort of doing 5K runs every single day. It's about teaching the muscles again how to burn, how to use that glucose how it once was.
That's so interesting.
That's so interesting as well that you mentioned that. Not just doing a 5K run every day. That we need to kind of think smarter, don't we, about exercise and what we're doing?
Yeah, totally, Susan. It's it used to be all about running, and many people still think I can lose weight, I must run every day. It's actually more beneficial, and your body will burn fat more efficiently if you are doing more resistance training over running, which I love because I'm not a good runner. I hate running, but I do enjoy resistance training, whatever it might be, whether it's really heavy or just body weight. And it doesn't have to be super technical. You can do all this stuff, things like Goldster classes. We teach it all there, and it really will help.
Yeah. How many times do you want a week, Tim?
1 at best. I mean, running is not my.
How many times are you on Goldster a week? How many times are you on Goldster a week?
Goldster, sorry, I was going to say, I don't want to admit my running my running list. I'm on Goldster 5 times a week.
5 times a week. So you can find Tim on Goldster 5 times a week, and in the comments you'll see links to 5 free classes if you want to experience Tim's classes. So talk to me a little bit about testosterone. So,
Yes.
And I'd love to know your thoughts on this, Susan, as well. So I started taking testosterone actually, but does the weight training help us build more testosterone? Will it help us have more testosterone in the body?
Yeah, so typically it's very well known men carry a lot more testosterone in our bodies because we have more muscle mass in general. But women can also release it once they start training, particularly in legs. There's the muscles in the legs are so big, in the bums as well. There's so much of it. You can really benefit from doing things like lots of legs, and you release certain amounts of testosterone, which yes can definitely help replace the estrogen that is on the decline.
That's so interesting. So the testosterone, though, is very good for focus, right, Susan? Sort of for drive, for focus, for is that have I got that right?
It is. That is something that it does hormonally in the body, but that doesn't necessarily mean that taking it as a hormone is going to exactly do that. And it's not prescribed for that in the UK by doctors. It is prescribed only for low libido, and people will you can get it, people do get it privately, but I've interviewed a lot of doctors for my book, and they have talked about quite mixed results with testosterone, and that as a supplement or as a therapy, because some women really thrive on it, and some either it doesn't make any difference or it makes them feel uncomfortable and headachy, and so it's quite a sort of mixed bag.
So in terms of the muscle building, though, of weight resistance training and you producing more testosterone, the type of testosterone you're going to produce naturally is going to help focus and building muscle mass and that kind of thing. Is that correct? Do you know?
It's an anabolic hormone, which is essentially an anabolic. So you've got a catabolic and anabolic, and this the testosterone is the anabolic hormone, which in simple terms means it is a building hormone.
Okay.
Not one that breaks down. That's not. There's much more science to it. But simply put, that is how it is. I have no qualification to give my opinions on taking any sort of extra hormone things, but the natural level that you will release in your body is right for each individual person. That's the beauty of it.
Fantastic. Yeah.
I mean, there are cases, of course, when there's an imbalance. Again, I'm not qualified to comment on that, but the day-to-day person, yes, will release what they need naturally, which is what's great about the body.
So someone's just saying here, wow, that's a new one on me, the glucose and muscles thing. All the more reason for enjoying Tim's classes with resistance training. There you go, Terry. Absolutely brilliant.
Oh, Terry, yeah, good.
Anna's just saying here, how do you do strength training safely when you feel like your bones are crumbling?
That's me.
Yeah.
The irony in that is that the more our muscles become stronger, that the attachment to muscle to bone encourages for our bone density to get stronger. The misconception is that you suddenly need to go from 0 to 100 with your skill and strength level. If you feel that your bones are brittle, you can start at the absolute minimum to what suits you, and that's an important thing as well. You've got to listen to your body. You can be shouted at. PTs can tell you to do all the stuff and give you all these equipment. There is always a harder, a medium, and a lesser version of any exercise to an extent. I can't think of one where there isn't, but so it's all about what works for that individual person. And you can build your strength up as slow as you want and just make a gradual climb. I think one of my sayings is all about progression, not perfection. We're not looking for that finished product. It's just that slow progression, and everyone is different. So work to your own ability. And again, the Goldster classes, I know the other two trainers as well, we always have an easier, harder, and a medium option, so to speak.
Yeah. And there's research. I know it feels really hard when when you're feeling fragile and your bones are aching, but there is research that shows that even with women with quite advanced osteopenia or osteoporosis, when they start strength training, it does make a difference. And of course, that has to be very carefully supervised. And exactly as Tim was saying, you start very, very gradually, but research shows it does make a difference, and it does strengthen bones, because your bones and your muscles are working so closely together. Well, they're obviously attached to each other, but one supports the other.
We are designed from from the dawn of man. We are designed not just to move. Men and women, we are designed to be strong. And I don't just mean picking up a shopping bag. We are designed to be able to deal with a critical situation at any given moment. We have got society these days. We are very used to doing less across the board, across the world. It's just how it is.
Yeah.
Slowly but surely, I think people are going to be more aware now that we need to start just getting slowly but surely stronger, because we are meant to be. The bones and the muscles tie together and they help themselves. But you have to work those muscles. That's what they're designed to do.
Exactly. And I think there's a real fear, and I find this with women I talk to and my clients, that if you start moving, you're going to get injured. If I couldn't go to the gym because I might hurt myself, I might get injured. But the reality is, if we don't strength train, if we don't do the things you're talking about, we'll get injured stepping up the curb, or falling downstairs, or something. Something will happen.
Yeah.
Getting off the sofa even will cause an injury if we haven't built and maintained that strength.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Yeah, it's there might be the one common misconception is that I think people worry about also pain in the gym. They are worried about, and I don't mean no pain, no gain. Please, I would never quote that. But there might be a bit of discomfort, particularly if you've never done resistance training or sort of slightly harder training ever in the past. Your bodies are going to go, wow, what's this? This is a new one. And there might be a bit of discomfort, but that is your body adjusting to what's happening. Give it a month, give it 3 months plus, you are going to start adapting, or your body's going to start adapting to what you're putting it through. And that is when you're going to start seeing the genuine advantages of just essentially keeping fitter, both from strength and cardiovascularly.
Yes, I found this with one of my clients who was suffering chronic back pain, and she, as a result, didn't really exercise. And I got her doing very gentle yoga classes on Goldster. And she said, she said, it's like my body's in shock because I haven't done anything for so long. But she said, I feel like my body's waking up. And she tried to keep herself. I know. So she tried to keep her sort of self safe, and the end result was everything was atrophying and not moving. And just gently reintroducing movement into our lives is so important.
And that mental feeling of what you've done for your body, for me, there is nothing better than your mind and your body connecting and being like, well done, you're working, this is good. The muscles around the body, for male and female, it's body armor. However you want to look at it, it is body armor. When we fall, it stops us from getting more hurt. There is also many researchers that suggest that more, bigger muscles, stronger muscles can help aid against things like type 2 diabetes, Alzheimer's. There's a lot of research out there. Now, again, I'm not qualified to give my full opinion on it, but I really believe that it is the best building block to help in older life, pre and post menopausal, of course, and then, of course, for male as well.
Well, I mean, I think also, Tim, I was just saying to Susan, when I went through menopause, I had such bad anxiety. But if I could get myself into the gym and lift weights, I would be back in my body, because I was the anxiety would lead me to sort of feel so frightened and sort of like out of my body. My body would feel like it was sort of not grounded, like I was floating, like I was just sort of, quivering. But then I'd go and do a session with weights. And I think it's the main form of exercise that afterwards, I just feel like I'm back in my body. And I feel that when you talk about an armor, because I'm quite slight, when I'm not doing my weight training, I feel quite frail and a bit vulnerable. And the weight training just makes me feel like my feet are firmly rooted on the ground. and that I feel there's a sense of comfort that comes with it, as I can feel my sort of muscles filling with blood, and I sort of feel this sort of slight, I feel more certain in my body and more certain in my life, you know. It's a really interesting feeling.
It grounds you, and because particularly weight training isn't that used, particularly if I'm completely honest, with sort of anyone in their 50s, female and older. A lot of people are scared to touch weights. They don't want to get big and muscly, which won't happen unless you're eating a huge amount of food, so you should be okay. But yeah, it grounds you, and the anxiety, not just scientifically, but just freshly oxygenated blood running around your body is good for you. It's what we're designed. It's how we're designed. It's meant to happen. But also, just from a mental point of view, if you're stronger, you feel stronger. Your head's held high, and it does wonders for the brain. Both men and female.
Yeah, and we were talking, Susan, weren't we, about the sort of there were a lot of comments here by people feeling downbeat, and because they've gained weight around their belly, or they've gained weight overall and their body's changing, and that sense of being able to do something for yourself that helps, take your self-care essentially. And of course that then leads you to sort of feel better about your self-image, appearance wise, feeling stronger,
not feeling invisible, as we were saying. You feeling invisible, actually, when you start to feel stronger, you don't feel like that, because you feel at home in your body, as you were saying. You feel that you're powerful. And a lot of the anxiety that comes with menopause is a sort of sense of perhaps losing our power. So if you physically go out there and reclaim it, that's really important.
Totally, like you've got your own back is the important thing. If you've got your own back, there's
I love that. That's brilliant.
it. So it's also that thing about posture, that physical posture.
Yes.
If you're feeling down, or people with depression, male or female, that kind of slump. When you're stronger, your posture change, your head is up, and it physically just does something to you. I can't explain the science, but it does work.
Yeah.
So yeah, Susan, I totally agree with that.
Yeah, 100%. It's so true that whole sort of physiology changes when we're in a low mood. Our breathing shallow, our head's down, our body's turned inwards. But that sense of it's almost like the power pose, isn't it? When we're standing upright, our shoulders are back, and our we feel we're breathing more deeply. All of these things can help us feel more grounded and more confident. Someone's even just saying here, how do we even start with something like resistance training from scratch and cheaply? I can't afford a personal trainer on top of everything else right now. So that's a stressful thought in itself. And they're free classes in local places, anything like the Couch to 5K for this type of exercise. Well, Couch to 5K's running.
That's running. Well, of course, the Goldster classes are really, really good value. As Lee was saying, you can get several classes for free.
You can get five classes, five complimentary classes, and it's $9.99 a month, and you can have access to hundreds of classes.
So you can do for that for $9.99. Once you've done your 5 free classes, you can do Tim's class 5 times a week. And as he said, he will always do different variations on a movement from the very, very beginning. And I think it is just about turning up and trying and having a go. And if you don't want to splash out on weights, then as Tim said, bottles of water, tins of beans, and then maybe treat yourself to the next size up, and then you're going to, once you're enjoying it, you're going to get a lot of use from them. But there are lots of options, and also lots of body weight. We're talking about weight, physical weights, but actually body weight exercises are really powerful. Things where if you're just not a press up, but a press up against the wall, then you can be very gentle, but you're working the muscles in your arm, or just a very slow, gentle squat. Again, you're working those leg muscles, as Tim was saying, is so important. And that's you're using the weight of your own body plus gravity to do that.
Yes.
You don't have to have equipment at all. Your own body is the best piece of equipment you've got, really.
Yeah. And so someone's also saying, Susan, is what foods build our muscle mass? Got any thoughts on that?
protein plus moving our muscles. We need is what we're aiming for. And I have never found one of my clients, and I suspect Tim would say the same, who's eating enough protein. Women, as a rule, don't eat enough protein. And actually, we don't need an enormous amount. It's not like we need to be eating a giant steak and a dozen eggs every meal, but most women aren't getting enough, aren't even getting the basic amount. Do you agree, Tim?
I totally agree. It is. It shocked me how much. Oh, have I gone again?
No, you're here. We can hear,
No.
we can hear you.
No, I really want to stay in chat. Okay, if you can hear me, that's
Yeah, we can
good
hear
enough.
you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, yeah, no, it is. It always shocks me how much protein is needed. You could go into a lot of depth, or you could just keep it nice and simple, which I usually like to try and do. It's just protein with each meal is what people tend to not do. What I've picked up on is that people are upset, the word breakfast, the word lunch, the word dinner, sort of put that out the window and just think you have 3 meals a day at minimum. They all need to have protein in them. The first one is your first meal of the day. It happens to be called breakfast, but the first meal when you eat it has to have a good amount of protein to get your muscles ready for the day ahead. That is how our bodies work. I hope people can still hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So you said to me something about you have enough protein. You worked it out on the weight of the person we did our training session. You said, he's gone again.
Yeah, so the basic, I'll pick that up. So the sort of the most basic, and we can talk to Claudia about this as well,
Yeah,
is
totally.
0.8 grams of protein per kilo of body weight. That's the maths. That's the equation. But you have to remember that even say a chicken breast, which we all know is high in protein, is not 100 grams of chicken is not 100 grams of protein. I can't remember how much it is, but it's less than that. Even protein powder, if you buy protein powder and you think that's going to be all protein, the highest amount it's likely to be is about 80% protein. So chicken has other things, it's got water and fibers and things in it. So it's not 100%. 100 grams is not 100 grams of protein. But if you're a very small person and you weigh 50 kilos, then you need 40 grams of protein per day minimum. And if you're doing a lot of strength training, you probably need more. And over the age of 65, you need a gram of protein per kilo of body weight.
That's so interesting. Okay, that's really helpful actually for me personally. So thank you for that. Lots of comments coming in. Thank you everyone for contributing to this conversation. Sorry we've lost Tim again. So as Sue was just saying, exercise really helps my mental health. Love that there is so much choice on Goldster. Anna, I have a kettlebell. My tummy upsets me. I'm small and can't fit into most of my trousers anymore. No waistline. And so what you were saying earlier about this was the glucose component, weren't you, and how you use that?
There's more to it. There are a lot of reasons why we put on fat, on weight round our middle when we hit menopause. So let's talk to Jude about that in terms of Pilates when she comes in a couple of minutes, if you've got more comments, because let's talk about those and then we can talk about middles.
Yeah, and so just to finish, before Jude comes on, Terry just saying, answering Kerry, Tim's classes cover beginners and upwards. I was a bit scared to start, but he is so good and motivating. You always move at your own pace. I started with cans of beans as weights. Give the classes a go, but do make sure you try the different classes. They are all different and change every time. Tim keeps us on our toes. It's a really fun way. Oh, isn't that lovely? So I'm so pleased that you're enjoying the classes. And Terry says, I'm a 64-year-old female, in case my name confuses you. Thank you, Terry. And then Kerry just saying, I do just think I need a person. I do need an in-person session to tell me what I'm doing right or wrong. But Kerry, do try the classes because They are, the presenters are incredibly thorough, and you can always contact them as well. So
Yeah, and they're so experienced at running the classes and being
Yes.
able to give you deal with individual issues and help you and be aware of what you might be finding tricky.
Totally. And there's 5 free classes you can do, and then it's £9.99 a month. So it's all great value. So our next speaker, are you there, Jude? If you are, there she is, Jude. How you doing?
Hi guys, lovely to see you both. Thanks for having me.
Oh my goodness,
Thank you
for joining us. It's so good to see you, Jude. So
thank you.
So Jude Hirschheimer is a Goldster presenter and a fully qualified Pilates Mat work and apparatus teacher. She's an in-depth knowledge of functional anatomy, biomechanics and neurobiology. She's worked with a variety of clients. Now hold on, because this is a long list, including pre- and postnatal mothers, perimenopause and menopausal women, post-operative surgery patients, spinal injuries, brain injuries, athletes, as well as people looking to improve their movement, health and well-being of all ages and abilities. I'm always fascinated when I read that out because I'm just like, where's the list going to end? It's very impressive. It's very impressive.
I promise you, I've worked with all those people.
I know you have. I've interviewed you before, and it was just a riveting conversation.
Thank you.
You know, it's so lovely to have you here, Jude, because we've got so many comments coming through about, as you've probably heard, about you know, the sort of way the body changes over the menopause and beyond. People not feeling great about the build-up of weight around their middle, about pelvic floor, and I know you helped us in our Goldster pelvic floor and core challenge.
Yes,
I think it's an area we've discussed, haven't we, Susan, about how, you know, we can have these issues around pelvic floor and stress incontinence as we go through the menopause and beyond. So maybe we can start, Jude, with telling us overall what the benefits of Pilates are for menopause and beyond from your perspective.
So I think from the musculoskeletal point of view, and I'm sure Tim has touched on this as well, it's an amazing practice for things like bone health and bone density. We do a lot of weight-bearing exercises in the mat work, but also with the equipment, just in case people are interested. So the equipment in Pilates is these big machines, and they have these springs and pulleys, and they add in resistance in a really safe way. So we kind of recreate these exercises that we do on the big machines in the mat work, and this adds on resistance, which helps with our bone health and our bone density, but it also helps us to build lean muscle mass, or lean body mass, and that can help to keep our body strong, resilient. I really like this word at the moment. It gives us this resilience in our bodies, and I teach a lot of women that are going through this stage, perimenopausal, postmenopausal, and it's something that has really changed in my thinking as I've been teaching people, and as I head into perimenopause as well. That people come in with.
Well, I'm out the other side, but anyway, carry on.
That people come in with sudden onset of pain, or just restriction, or aches and pains in their ligaments and their bones and their joints, and sometimes it comes out of nowhere, or they'll just have bent down and pick something up and their back have gone. And normally, having, you know, that experience with people before, I'm like, all right, okay, we're looking at movement patterns, we're looking at postural stuff. But actually, the more I teach women of this age, hormones come into this, and hormonal fluctuations. And this is something that I'm really thinking about and looking into, that it's like, maybe I need to ask more questions, because they're coming in with back pain and things like that, and we need to build their muscle mass, we need to build their bone density. You know, there is a risk of osteoporosis at this time, so Pilates is really beneficial for not only helping this sudden onset of joint aches and pains, but also bringing a bit more resilience into the body as well.
Yeah, because we have estrogen receptors throughout our bodies and our joints, particularly, don't we? So when that estrogen starts to roller coaster and then decline, then our joints are going to hurt, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's confusing as well. Like, I speak to so many women, and they're like, I don't know why I've suddenly got joint pain, or it's getting worse. It's really confusing, and what I was getting a sense of when I was reading the Facebook posts and the comments is that people didn't realize that they were in perimenopause, or they didn't realize they were in menopause. And actually, we need to think about this fluctuation of estrogen and progesterone, and that's what's potentially giving us this joint issue, as well as our everyday movement patterns and our postural positioning and how we breathe and how we move. So this has to come into play as well, I think.
And I'm sure you find with your clients that and in your classes that, of course, when you start aching like that and your back sore, the last thing you want to do is to exercise in any form, but actually it's the most important thing you need to do.
It is the most important thing. And you know, I talk to a lot of women. It's not just when I'm in my studio, it's not just, right, let's go into the movement. I talk to a lot of women and they are nervous about movement. And if they have come in because they've started to get achy joints or their back has gone, it's like, well, if I'm feeling achy, is it going to make it worse? And you kind of have to explain and go very slowly and carefully and say, no, but we need to find a rate that you are happy with, a pace, if you like, so that your body can almost trust the process of what's happening, and that you can see that there is benefit in movement. And yes, you're going to feel achy, but that achiness is often where the muscles maybe haven't moved in this way. You know, we work on the deep postural intrinsic muscles in Pilates, and so we don't often access them, or if we've moved in a certain way for a really long time, that's going to feel weird to put ourselves back into that position. And I actually did a class at the weekend. It was an osteoporosis class, like a focus on that. And my body the next day was aching. And it was just like, oh. So it is important to, or it's important to have that understanding that we are going to potentially ache, and that it's okay. But if that ache maybe doesn't go away or it starts to get worse, then maybe we need to look at and address why that's happening.
When you say deep intrinsic muscles, is that what you said? What does that mean?
Yes. So I'm talking about, for example, if I give you the example of the spine, if we go into just a teeny tiny bit of anatomy, it's the spinal stabilizing muscles. It's the muscles that are small, but they hold us, and they're not the big muscles that do big movements, but the smaller movements that help us stay upright and help us move in a delicate way. It's like postural stabilization. Does that make sense? So like with the hip socket, it's not the big muscles, but the muscles that hold the hip in place, and the femur moves within the hip. So we're looking at those, and when you're starting to change things around that and stabilize those muscles, it can feel really different. And it can feel strange, and it can feel alien in a way.
Yes, yeah. And Jude, you are a type of breath work coach as well, aren't you? So can you share a little bit about what type of breath work coach you are and how that works within the sessions that you offer, and how that works within the classes?
So it's more that I'm really big on, and it's something that I really try and teach my clients, even in Goldster, even in a class, is kind of the anatomy of breath work, because it's powerful to understand why we're breathing and where we're breathing and how we're accessing this breathing. So it's not that I suppose I do teach certain types of breath work, but obviously the breathing that we do is diaphragmatic breathing. It's learning to move the diaphragm down and up, and so we have more functionality in this system. Our diaphragm moving well creates something called intra-abdominal pressure. If we create intra-abdominal pressure, this helps us, it basically gives us what we call the force transfer to be able to move our arms and legs well and freely. So I'm really hot on, well, if you're restricted around your center, if you're holding yourself in the whole time and pulling in and pulling in and pulling in, really, we need to be able to expand the muscles around our center for the diaphragm to move down and come back up. So really what we're trying to look at is synergistic movement throughout this area. And this then does other things, like it will take the tension away from the neck and the shoulders. If we're breathing up here, and I think I've said this to Lee before, we breathe 25,000 times a day. If we're breathing up here rather than into here, that's going to send this area into, it's going to give us some mechanical issues. So I'm really big on let's get the breathing down to here. It stabilizes the spine because the diaphragm attaches onto the spine. It gives us a more upright positioning, but it also, if we're stretching muscles to contract the muscles, it gives us an appearance of being longer and leaner.
Interesting. And I suppose with that type of breath work within a practice, then when many of the comments were talking about this sort of heightened level of anxiety that people were feeling, and the hot flushes continuing, and I suppose I remember you said to me, when you can optimize this type of breathing and you do it regularly, then it's optimized for when you really need it. So say you are feeling the sense of anxiety rising, you have more of an ability to be able to tap into that system and mobilize your parasympathetic, your calming response, and then take the temperature, if you excuse the awful pun, down.
That's exactly right. And I'm going to quote a neuroscientist called Dr. Andrew Huberman. He said something really brilliant about the diaphragm. Pardon?
I'm a big fan.
He's great, isn't he? He's so good. So he was like, if you can control the diaphragm, you can control your heart rate. If you can control your heart rate, you can control your response to stress. If we can control our response to stress, that's a powerful thing. I don't, it's a really good question. I don't know if it can control our hot flashes, but because I don't really understand maybe the anatomy of that as much. But I'm like, well, if we're dialing everything down, because it makes us anxious when we have a hot flash, right? So if we can dial that down and regulate that, that's got to help our temperature gauge in some way.
I mean, I would say, being the voice of absolute experience on this hot flush thing, because I had so many when I was going through the menopause. And when I was able to tune in to mobilizing that calming response, I was able to accommodate and tolerate the hot flushes more easily without me sort of going into slightly, here it comes, it's coming, it's getting hotter. I would just be able to surf it rather than be submersed by it, was my experience of it. So I would just sort of go with the rhythm of my breath and just sort of imagine this beautiful, cool air across my face and my body.
Nice.
A beautiful calming color, that I was just being wrapped in this cool cloud of, blue, whatever. And then before I knew it, I was out the other side. So I think it's that combination of the sort of knowing that we have the power to switch on that, mobilize that calming response. And also from a sort of therapist point of view, we have this hugely powerful resource, which is our imagination. And when we're emotionally aroused, we can often catastrophize. But when we're mobilizing the breathing, you can use our imagination and sort of think of, well, what's going to help me most here? A beautiful calming breeze, so we can walk in nature, visualizing myself cool and calm, my feet are in cold water, that kind of thing, I think is all just tapping into our natural resources. And Jude, someone just saying here, I try meditative and mindful practice and it helps me so much. I've been drinking more alcohol than usual lately too, just to help me get through this time. And that's an interesting one. And I think that's probably, what would you say, both of you, something that is, can happen when we go through this transition? Is it as a coping skill, something to cope?
It does happen, and I really understand why it does happen, but it's not necessarily the answer that's going to help in any sort of long term, because alcohol impacts our sleep. Most importantly, we don't get that deep sleep that we need when we've consumed alcohol, and it doesn't take very much. And as we've been talking about already, sleep in menopause is really vital. It's in short supply. It's something that we want to get as much of as we possibly can, and alcohol does impact that, particularly as we are going through this transition. And also alcohol increases anxiety levels.
Huge.
So it's really difficult to say, when someone says, this is my coping mechanism, it's very difficult to say to them, I'm not sure that it's the right one. So I think I would be saying, perhaps, do you have in your toolbox any other coping mechanisms, like the breathing that Jude was talking about, as a tool that would help?
I don't know if this is useful. I don't really drink. I haven't really drunk for about 3 years. And what sometimes is really useful in that, and again, it depends, because it's drinking alcohol, it's that habit as well of kind of just wanting that reset, that dial down, and that relaxation. And what I found sometimes is helpful is maybe having the non-alcoholic stuff, like, I don't know, non-alcoholic gin and that kind of thing, or having a drink that you really enjoy that isn't alcoholic, and maybe just having, I think someone recommended like dark chocolate with it or something like that, just to help. But that's my own personal experience, that really helps me not want to have a drink. So
yeah, and I think it's also interesting from sort of the therapeutic point is noticing the pattern of what is it that prompts a person to pick up the drink. What's the pattern of events that have happened just before that happens? Because is it that there's been one sort of stressor, the things in our environment that stress us out, there's been a bit much on that day, and sort of creating that awareness of those patterns of things that might happen can often then you build a different awareness of how can you cope with those stresses in a way that perhaps be more helpful now and in the long run, so that we don't set up patterns of behavior that may in the immediate sort of sense feel like it's doing something. And alcohol and cigarettes and these sorts of things can be a bit like a two-faced friend. It seems like they're doing a lot of good, but actually if you do it too long, they're actually not. So I think that looking at the pattern of it, what's happened just before, what does it give you? What is the feeling that you're looking to evoke with that drink? And also, what other times in your life have you had that sense of relaxation? When else have you experienced that feeling that you're getting from having a drink, but in other contexts of life? Because if you experienced it there, you could maybe, is there something there that's helpful that you could use now, and little by little find these new sort of ways of coping. I don't know if that helps at all, Anna. I was just saying alcohol makes hot flushes worse. Yes, I mean, I certainly found that when I could drink a couple of glasses, but literally I'll have half a glass of red wine, and I am just dancing, I'm on the table. So, I mean, it's utterly ridiculous, and I fall asleep. I mean, I'm hopeless, absolutely hopeless. Which is actually, so I'm the cheapest date ever now.
Me too, probably.
It's like wonderful, and you can go out to dinner and the bill's never that big, is it?
You're right.
So silver linings, everybody. Sue just saying, I've been with Goldster from the start. Is the best thing I've done. Helped me so much during lockdown. I've learned so much about looking after myself nutritionally, mentally and physically. $9.99 per month is an absolute steal for the choice of over 300 classes. Sue, that is such a lovely comment. I'm so pleased that that's working for you. And Anna just said thank you, that those thoughts on just using alcohol as a coping mechanism. She said that was helpful, so that's really good. So Susan, have you practiced Pilates before?
I haven't. I've done a bit of reformer Pilates, but I haven't done a lot of Pilates, but I'm really interested in what it can do to help with pelvic floor issues.
Yes.
Because Lee and I talked about this on our Instagram Live a couple of weeks ago, and I talked to my Goldster class about genitourinary syndrome of menopause, which is such a massive thing, and it's just extraordinary, and it is one of the things, as we were saying earlier, that doesn't get better with time. It doesn't settle, and women can start having issues around pelvic health, genitourinary health decades after the menopause, and not link the two together, not link it with declining estrogen. And I know from my research from the book, the kind of gold standard is to look at pelvic floor health, look at muscle strength in that area, and also look at low dose vaginal estrogen, which is not HRT, systemic HRT in the way that we think of HRT that Davina McCall talks about. So I'd really like to talk to you, Jude, about the kind of the muscles, the physical side of that, how do we support our pelvic health, our urinary health, etc.?
Yeah. So this is I really enjoy talking about pelvic floor, and if I could just go back to the anatomy again, the pelvic floor is actually called the pelvic diaphragm. It's but yeah, it's actually there's 7 diaphragms within the body, and the pelvic floor is one of the diaphragms. It's a pelvic diaphragm. We've got the thoracic diaphragm, and these guys work in unison, kind of together. The pelvic floor, as I understand it, with my anatomy that I've studied, its main job, its main role in life, in our bodies, is to support the downward pressure from the thoracic diaphragm as we breathe in. So if you imagine the pelvic floor is a little bit like a very small trampoline, and it's very flexible. It's supposed to be very mobile. And as we breathe in, the whole system comes down, and as we breathe out, the whole system comes up. And the reason the pelvic floor does that is because we don't want our organs within our pelvis to prolapse. So this is our sexual organs, our urinary organs, everything. So this is what the role of the pelvic floor is. So again, it comes back to breathing and how we breathe and how well we're accessing this system. The pelvic floor is directly involved. It's also attached to the pelvis. So it's going to receive its cueing from other muscles above the pelvis. So when everything moves down, that's its job. It's like getting ready to buffer that pressure. So if we can incorporate breathing into all the movements that we do, not just, purposely, but just getting the system to work better, that's amazing. But to be honest, many of the exercises that we do in Pilates are going to be accessing the pelvic floor. If we're accessing this breathing, it doesn't necessarily have to be that we're pulling in and pulling up the whole time. We want to be able to release and move into it, because that's just as important. I think there's sometimes a bit of over activation within this area, and we want to really get this really nice pliability into these muscles, because the pelvic floor system, as I understand it, is always on a little bit of what we call eccentric load. So it's always on a little bit of stretch. It has to be, because it has to be able to buffer this pressure. So one of the best exercises that we can do for the pelvic floor, according to biomechanists, is the squat. But we have to earn our way up into that squatting position. The reason it's so good is because we've got gravity working with us. We've got to kind of work against gravity, and we've got to get that movement. It's a hip hinge movement. It's working. The pelvic floor muscles are fascially connected. They've got connective tissue connecting into the femur. So when we squat, the femur activates and the pelvic floor switches on as well. So that's why squatting is brilliant, but we've got to kind of earn our way up to that. So we do lots of different exercises, maybe on our back, on all fours, to help our pelvic floor to dial in. So we want to dial into that. So there's loads that we can do, but I truly believe that we can bring it into our practice in any way. It's not just about Kegel, Kegel, Kegel. That's awesome. But we want to be able to breathe and move well within that as well. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, and we have so many estrogen receptors in that area, of course, because that's kind of where babies happen. That when that starts to decline, we're losing so much of the kind of movement and elasticity, etc. In that area. So it's really interesting you say it's not just that squeeze, that
movement, because when you're moving down, you're massaging the organs, like everything's getting blood flow and oxygenation, and we want this pliability, like you say, because we lose estrogen in this area. We want that movement, that elasticity to come back. So if we're just tightening and tightening and tightening and tightening, I think we lose that a little bit more. So it's very important to have like a balance between maybe Kegels and breath work and movement in general, and building up to that squat position.
So if somebody can't feel their pelvic floor, because this is what came up when we did the pelvic floor and core challenge.
Sure.
Some people were commenting, I don't know where it is, I can't feel it.
What is it?
What would you say? What would be your advice?
I would say, don't worry too much about feeling. It's like that I get that we need to feel to know that we're accessing it, but even if you can just sort of visualize, I often think it's empowering to see where the muscles are and have this visual in our head of where the muscles are. So I don't think we know what the pelvic floor muscles look like. They actually lasso around the hiatuses within our pelvis, and when I first saw it, I was like, I didn't realize it looked like that. So I think it's important to have this visualization of where they are and what they're doing and how they look. And then that's really powerful. Just visualizing what you're trying to do. You're trying to move it down and come back up, and moving it in different positions, I think. So yes, if you can't feel it or you can't quite access that, then just the very power of breathing and knowing that you're breathing well, I think, and visualizing that area, I think that's important.
Do you
think that's helpful?
Yeah, no, it is totally. Do you think if someone stands up and tries to sort of, as if they are trying to stop themselves peeing, that can help?
I don't know. That's a really good question. I think because gravity is then in the mix as well, I think that makes it harder. I think things like where you're lying on your back and maybe lifting like a pelvic lift, so you've got more like gravity that way, that could give you more access to the pelvic floor.
Right.
I think.
Okay. And so, because I remember when I was sort of taught them, because my mum never did them, and she got into all sorts of problems later in life. I mean, she ended up with a prolapsed womb. And she always said to me, always do your pelvic floors, always do your pelvic floors. And I had two babies that were like, one was 9, 12, and the other was 10 pounds. Yes. Wow. Yes, I know, exactly. I used to joke about things like that. And I weigh 50 kilograms. Do you know what I mean?
You're tiny. How did that work, Lee?
I mean, I'm like that. I'm a bloody miracle, I tell you. And I just thought to myself, God, I'm never going to have sex again and ever feel anything. And what's going to happen to me afterwards? Anyway, so I became obsessed with pelvic floor. I
understand.
Yeah, but it was that thing that I was sort of told initially that, you mustn't engage your lower abdomen as well as the sort of pelvic floor area. But it's all interconnected from what you're saying.
So hard because it's so attached. It's attached everywhere. You couldn't not without the other. So that's a bit like I don't know, the whole patting your head and it's really difficult. So don't worry. I think we're told don't do this, don't do that. It's like, can you access it? Can you breathe well? Well, then we've got the pelvic floor working. If we can breathe well, the pelvic floor is working well.
So could you sort of if you were lying down, could you pull in your lower abdomen, sort of squeeze as if you were going into the pelvic, and that's going to kind of okay. So you can sort of work from the other way, which I think is so helpful. Yeah. Because otherwise you kind of like
you're like, where, what, who, I can't put my abs in, or it's like, we're trying to access something that some people cannot find, like do what it takes, and then we can work on the intrinsics of that, know?
Yeah. So. Andrea just saying, I did Pilates this morning. It was great and so well explained.
Thank you, Andrea.
And Sandra's just saying, Pilates amazing for menopause in so many ways. It's got me through the past 4 years, and the Goldster instructors are brilliant. I've practiced Pilates a while, but still learned so much from the Goldster classes. And Trish is saying, really enjoying the Pilates classes. That is so brilliant. And Kerry laughing at my comment about the baby. She said, ha ha, me, 110 pounds, 9 pounds 13. Hey, yay. Come on, Kerry. Medical mysteries. Yes, exactly. And so how many times a week are you on Goldster, Jude?
I'm on Monday at 10 and Tuesday at 10.
A Monday and Tuesday. So, of course, if you've just joined this live, you can get 5 complimentary classes to explore Pilates with Jude. And I've done some of Jude's classes, and she's absolutely brilliant because the way you explain it, Jude, is so clear. And I love the location you film from as well, which is where you are now.
That's right.
And also on our Facebook page, on the videos, Jude has got some wonderful videos where she explains in detail the progression of pelvic floor exercises. So the starting point, I think you did 2 or 3, didn't you, Jude, for us? I think, was it 2? I can't remember.
I can't remember. I think I did a pelvic floor video just with an example of a rocking movement that I do. And I think then I did a menopause video with an exercise as well.
Yes. So they're on the Facebook page as well, if you want to access those. And anything else you want to say, Susan, or share, Jude? that would be helpful for our viewers, or indeed if you've got any more questions, anybody, do let us know before our next guest comes on.
I think if I can just say, if you are in the perimenopause or the menopause or post, and your body is aching and you've got musculoskeletal aches and pains, it's like, I think just start a practice, even if it's, you have a look on Goldster and you do a class and you're just noticing like how it feels in your body, even if it's for 10 minutes, and just see how you go. I think it really is about starting and seeing how it feels in your body and then building from there. And then once you get into that habit and you build up, then you realize that, oh my goodness, my body doesn't ache as much anymore, or I can do the things that I couldn't do before. So that would be my message, is to just start and see how you find things and go from there. No pressure, don't put pressure on yourself, just little, slowly.
Absolutely. Like Tim was
And
saying.
it will, yes, we've been saying help with so much. It helps with the breath work, which helps with your posture, which helps with your confidence. And then you feel pelvic floor stronger, you feel more confident because you're not rushing to the loo the whole time. And, it's a real mind-body connection.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. And absolutely. Of course, when your pelvic floor is good, it helps, with sexual intimacy as well, which is another, point around menopause, isn't it? When you've got sort of weaker pelvic floor, it doesn't feel the same, and you're going through these changes. That part of our relationship can struggle. So that keeping all of that toned and working is all really helpful. And someone's just saying here, they love your classes, and
Thank
really
you.
So wonderful. Yes, Sue, love Jude's Pilates. Jude, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
You've been an absolute gem as always.
It's lovely to speak to you guys.
Yeah, I hope you all enjoyed that, and do join Jude's classes on Goldster.
Bye, Jude.
Now you see it, now you don't.
Yeah.
Wasn't that lovely?
Yeah, gosh, and so interesting. A lot of things I didn't know there about the breath.
Yeah.
And how, we talk a lot about breathing into our diaphragm below our ribs, but then our pelvic floor essentially is a lower diaphragm that moves when we breathe. So we want to be breathing properly. So much comes back to breath, doesn't it? But we want to be moving properly so that we're keeping our pelvic floor toned, which is so very important in menopause and beyond. Just having that strength and flexibility there, because so many women, up to 85% of women, suffer from genitourinary symptoms of menopause at some point.
85%. Yeah. Gosh, that's a high percentage, isn't it?
Pretty much everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, let us know in the comments if you're one of those 85%, because we'd love to hear from you. So our next guest is the wonderful Claudia Feuvre, and I hope there she is, nutritionist extraordinaire. Hi.
Hello.
Lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you, Lee. Lovely to meet you, Susan.
Yes, lovely to meet you. I've actually been to some of your classes, and everyone who comes to my class always raves about you. So, it's really nice to meet you.
Claudia's a superstar, and she's got 16 years clinical nutrition experience. She's a lecturer at the British College of Nutrition and the Nutritional Healing Foundation, and she is on Goldster on a Wednesday and a Friday. Lovely to see you. Now, I have to say that you're one of the most you have one of the most popular classes on Goldster. You have a raving fan base.
I'm very grateful. I really enjoy it. Love the sessions. I love all the feedback, and people share so much, don't they? It was like the post that you posted and what's triggered this event. It's been amazing.
Yes, I know. It's absolutely incredible, isn't it? And I think it comes to the question of how we can support ourselves through the menopause and hormonally with nutrition. That's a big question, isn't it?
Yes.
So maybe is that a good place to start? How nutrition can help us through, some of the comments we've seen on Facebook, from everything from hot flushes to sleep issues to weight gain to dry skin. Let us, dig in, Claudia.
Okay, well, so there's overarching things we can be doing to generally support our hormone production. And Susan, you mentioned falling off a cliff, and we can use some natural ways to lessen that gradient, if you like, and try and steep a little bit more gradually. And then, of course, there are lots of things that we can be doing for individual symptoms. You were just talking about vaginal dryness and atrophy. I mean, maybe we could dive in there. What do you reckon?
Absolutely. Let's get in there.
Let's get right in, because
it's a huge issue. So I was just saying, up to 85% of women suffer genital urinary symptoms. So everybody knows what it's like.
It's a major issue, and I have to say, I first discovered omega-7s. I don't know, Susan, if you recommend sea buckthorn and omega-7s, because I first learnt about them for dry eyes. So I had a client who came to me, and every week before her period, she was an artist, and every week before her period, she couldn't paint and she couldn't draw because her eyes became so dry. So the hormones really do affect all our mucosal membranes all around the body. And so I did a ton of research, because it wasn't a specialism that I had at that time. And so I said, look, I really think, I've done research, I really think let's try this sea buckthorn out. And she was able to paint again before her periods. She was perimenopausal. So this omega-7 is actually really helpful. And there's a really interesting study. Can I just read you some of the statistics from this study?
Yeah.
So it was a 3-month trial on 55 post-menopausal women with vaginal dryness symptoms. Vaginal dryness and painful intercourse were the most problematic symptoms, with 65% of participants initially rating their symptoms as severe or very severe. So they completed this trial for over 12 weeks, and they all rated their symptoms. And the results showed, for intimate dryness, 86% of women found a significant improvement, and 22% reported their symptoms disappeared. With painful sex, 41% of participants were asymptomatic by the end of the trial, while 36% reported their symptoms had substantially improved. And then itching and burning were also alleviated over 12 weeks. So I really have seen this to be very, very effective, whether it's, like I said, dry eyes, dry sinuses can be very uncomfortable. Sometimes people suffer with dry mouths.
Yes.
It is a very natural way, but and sometimes people can't always take the estrogen pessaries, which obviously work in a very localized area, which can be very effective at reversing the atrophy, as can the sea buckthorn. So it's always good to have other options up your sleeve, isn't it?
Totally.
Yeah, they have an armory of and actually that's great, because we've talked about exercise and just talked about Pilates for the pelvic floor, and I mentioned the vaginal estrogen that you just have done. So to know that there's also a nutritional way of dealing with the issue as well. It's like, try everything. You're suffering, you try everything.
And also, I mean, if you're an HRT and HRT is working for you, and then at some point you might want to come off the HRT, and then you're aware of other things you can be doing as well.
So what when you say, is it sea buckthorn? Is that what you called it? So is that coming in a capsule, or what is?
It's a capsule. It's a capsule. You take 2 or 3 a day.
2 or 3 a day. And how long would a person take that for before they would start to sort of see a difference, do you think?
Well, actually, I have more research from them on that, and they found that in terms of speed of action, 7% noticed a difference within 1 week.
1 week?
30% noticed a difference in 2 weeks, and 56% noticed a difference in 4 to 6 weeks.
Gosh, that's quite impressive, isn't it?
Yeah.
And is there anything you could use topically, do you think, that would help?
I'm sure there definitely is. There's lots of, calendula and aloe vera and, very sympathetic homeopathic lubricants and, gels and things. Yeah. But in terms of efficacy, I think that's the best study I've seen.
Yeah.
And also because it works systemically through the body as well. It's going to help with your eyes and everything else.
Yes. Yeah. Would it help with skin? Would it help with dry skin on your body?
I'm not sure.
Because that's the other thing that's come up quite a lot, actually, is as the estrogen drops, the skin becomes a lot drier on the face, and also the skin elasticity drops. You know, there's a sort of tendency, and also the skin on the body. We were talking about below the knees earlier, weren't we, Susan? It often becomes a bit scaly. And so a few people were saying in the comments earlier about, my skin's got so dry. And also some people were saying they've broken out, in acne, they're on sort of prescription benzoyl peroxide from the doctor. So anything you have around sort of those types of issues in nutrition?
Sure. So in terms of the omega oils, I'd go more for omega-3 than omega-7 for the external skin, if you like.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay.
So it is a sign when we've got really dry skin that we might not be getting enough good fats in our diet. And actually, this is so important, not just for our skin, but also for protecting our brain. Our brain is 60-70% fat. We need to feed ourselves with the good fats, but also be protecting them with lots of good antioxidants as well. But sorry, I'm deviating. Keeping hydrated is really important. And electrolyte balance. Sometimes when the legs become so incredibly dry, it can also be a sign of hypothyroidism. So it is also worth checking with your doctor, because that can come about at times of hormonal change.
Interesting.
So, as a general rule, if you're suddenly feeling extremely fatigued and you're thinking, oh my gosh, is this all the menopause? Maybe just go and ask for a blood test and check your, B vitamins, your iron. Just ask as many markers as they're willing to test for. It's always good to get that information.
Yes, I think actually that's a really good general point when it comes to, women's health generally, but menopause and beyond. You get tested, know your baselines, know what you're low on, what you're high on. Have you got enough vitamin D? What's your bone strength? You take ownership, really.
Absolutely. And with all of this, trend is your friend. So get a marker in the sand now, and then repeat in 6 months, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, whatever you want to do. But you've got a benchmark. Yeah. What's happened to my hormones? What's happened to my iron? What's happened to vitamin D is so important. Many doctors don't test it, but it is a really good thing to know. Know your numbers. And track it and keep a record. We started this talking about how estrogen kind of wraps us up and keeps us safe, and then tells us we're on our own. So much of this is about taking responsibility and looking after ourselves and nourishing ourselves well, and doing everything else as well.
So Sue was just asking here, Claudia, what is the dosage of sea buckthorn and omega-7? Because omega-7, so...
Yes, that's a really, really good question. So let me just have a look here. It's 1,000 milligrams of sea buckthorn is the daily dose.
1,000 milligrams?
Yes. So I take 2 a day, but the dose is 1,000 milligrams is 3 a day.
Okay. So that's omega-7, and you would then take omega-3 as a supplement?
Yes, this does contain some omega-3 and 9 as well. But I would say if you've got any cholesterol issues, or you've got a particular interest, you've got dry skin, then I would take an omega-3 oil supplement.
An omega-3 oil, okay.
But as with any supplement, please always check with your doctor or your pharmacist that it's the right thing for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and someone was just saying, Kate, what is the optimum vitamin D to take?
Okay, so again, this is where Susan's absolutely right. Measuring your vitamin D is a really good place to start, because for example, I've had one member today, last week, she was telling me that she has been taking her vitamin D for over a year, but her levels were still a bit low, so her doctor has had to put her on a higher dose. So it is worth knowing, but as a general rule of thumb, 1,000 IU a day is very safe, and this is what everyone should be taking according to the NICE guidelines. Okay.
So you would be taking vitamin D, possibly omega-3 for the dry skin. You would be taking omega-7 for, we're talking about vaginal dryness, to deal with that. So what else would you recommend as sort of nutritional support as we go through transition and beyond?
Well, it depends. If you're up for making it yourself, then I would always recommend a good chicken stock or bone broth. just because it's got glucosamine, chondroitin, collagen, all the things that people spend a fortune on supplements for, is there in your kitchen if you can be bothered to cook it up. But it's super helpful for, we've got to look after our collagen and our elastin, as you were saying.
Yeah.
And, you know, getting that into our diets is incredibly important, not just eating protein, but having some bone broth, chicken stock, keeping the gut healthy so that we can continue to assimilate our nutrients and also help with the excretion of hormones. You know, help the hormones be processed efficiently through the body. When we get constipated, they get recycled back when we're trying to clear them.
That's so interesting. I've never thought of that, to be honest. What's glucosamine? What's glucosamine then?
Glucosamine is something that people often take for arthritis and sore joints and things. It helps with joint care, but it's very expensive. And honestly, you know, taking a food first approach, omega-7, we can't go harvesting sea buckthorn very easily. I think we'd have to go off to Sweden and other places. But yeah, we can be making the bone broth or chicken stock.
So it would be an organic chicken you'd always recommend, wouldn't it?
Ideally, yes.
Yeah. Go on, Susan, you were going to say something.
I've been really interested to ask Claudia about phytoestrogens, because you talked about sort of slowing that that dip off the cliff. And I'd be interested to know your view on phytoestrogens, by which I mean, for everyone else, plant-based estrogens, things like soy, flax, black, I'm not pronouncing this right, coash. But plant-based sources of estrogen effectively, because anecdotally a lot of people say they really help, but some of the research is a bit patchy. So I'd just be interested to know your
So let me explain first the concept behind it and the mechanism. So if we've got an estrogen receptor here, the idea is that a phytoestrogen will come and bind on that receptor and it will exert a mild estrogenic effect. Okay, now when we are menopausal, premenopausal, and the hormones can be up and down, and sometimes premenopausally we're estrogen dominant because the progesterone has fallen faster than the estrogen. And when that happens and you take a phytoestrogen, it's great because the phytoestrogen attaches to the receptor, exerts a mild estrogenic effect, and that's a milder effect than another circulating estrogen hormone. So if you are estrogen dominant, it will help calm that dominance. And if you are deficient in estrogen, if you're low in it, remember, Dr. Louise Newson always says menopause is a hormone deficiency. If you're deficient in the estrogen, then it will still exert a mild estrogenic effect. So it's win-win. And Susan, I would not be without my ground linseeds every morning, a good tablespoon. And if you know, and then there's the seed cycling as well. Have you heard of seed cycling?
No.
So this is where, if you're still menstruating, this is where you would have your linseeds and pumpkin seeds the first 2 weeks of your cycle to support the estrogen production, and then the second half of your cycle you support the progesterone production with these progesterone natural progesterone components, which are sunflower and sesame seeds every morning for the second half of your cycle.
I've no idea. I wish I'd known all this when I was going through the menopause. Someone's just saying here a couple of things. Is bone broth powder the same as natural?
It's not exactly the same, but it's a good alternative, and it doesn't stink out the kitchen so much. So I mean, there are all sorts of ways. There are even companies that will deliver it freshly made to you. There's all sorts of things. But just to say, a stock cube does not cut it. It has to be from a health store.
Yeah. So, and just Carrie was asking here, what can I do to supplement the vegan and vegetarian diets that people, my adult kids, I live with eat. Okay, so the vegan vegetarian diets that people she lives with eat. Is mostly a vegan diet not a good thing for a peri mum? I'm not vegan myself, but mostly eat the kids' food as it's simpler. So she's perimenopausal, and what could she do to supplement a vegan diet?
So
And what were your thoughts on that?
Well, this is where actually doing some blood testing would be super helpful to know what your B12, your iron, your B6, your what else, vitamin D. It would be very, very helpful. But I would say you can buy vegan omega oil supplements. You can even buy vegan collagen these days, collagen powder. To take it seriously, if you want to eat vegan food, that's absolutely fine. And of course, we'll respect, a full respect for anyone taking any kind of diet. But it's just always, you might have to work a bit harder at getting some of those nutrients. Like the B12 can be really challenging for vegans. Getting enough protein can be really hard.
Yeah, so if we were talking about protein earlier with Tim, and in terms of building muscle, etc. As we're going through menopause and beyond, and actually, so you just have to work harder, don't you, to get enough protein on a vegan diet.
Yeah, nut butters, seeds, tofu, tempeh, but lentils, chickpeas, but you need to eat the healthier foods. It's more important in a way to eat the healthier foods on a vegetarian or vegan diet. I mean, at least vegetarians can have the eggs.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Totally. And Claudia, hot flushes. You mentioned to me, I remember when we spoke ages ago, and I was being tormented by hot flushes. You said sage. Is that right?
Sage, yes.
So sage. Yeah.
I find sage very helpful. So you can either have sage tea, but obviously cool it down with a few ice cubes. You don't want to be having hot drinks necessarily. Coming off the caffeine, reducing the alcohol. Honestly, this is number one, cutting down the alcohol. Pre-pandemic, I used to work at residential health retreats where people go off to glorious locations all around the world, and they'd have a week of no wheat, no dairy, no alcohol, no sugar, no caffeine. It might sound like torture, but it wasn't, because the chefs were incredible and every meal was a feast. And people would arrive on day one and they'd say to me, "Oh my gosh, my night sweats, my hot flushes, dreadful." By day 6, they would go, "Oh my gosh, it's so much better, it's gone." And then on the last night, there would be a celebratory glass of Prosecco.
Dun dun.
The next morning, they were committed to the no alcohol, to dramatically reducing their alcohol. It was really, it wasn't great to have that glass of Prosecco, was it? But it really did prove the point.
Yeah.
They really understood the connection there.
Yeah. So Kerry just saying, thanks. I have GP blood test results because I'm on HRT. And I'm on a heavy dose of iron and vitamin D as a result. So well done. So Kerry's already getting those tests done, which is really helpful. So I just want to say to everybody that actually on the Facebook page at the moment, we have a Goldster giveaway. And the giveaway is a 1-to-1 30-minute session with Claudia. And also, you can also, along with that, win her Mighty Green Muscle Balm. And actually talking about the issue of skin, and this has come up so many times in the 1,300 comments we had, you spoke about omega-3s for skin, but you also have a really good moisturizer called Mighty Green, don't you? Which I've actually used, and with my makeup hat on, was incredible in terms of hydration. Do you want to tell us a bit about
So in terms of hydration, we incorporated beta-glucans. And I know I'm normally talking about beta-glucans in terms of our oats, but they actually have a really even more of a humectant effect than hyaluronic acid. So that's why it was so hydrating.
Yes. So can you explain to people what hyaluronic acid is and what a humectant does, so people know?
So everyone might have heard of hyaluronic acid by now, but I discovered it about 8-10 years ago when a client came to me with a dry shoulder joint. I was thinking, what do I do from a nutrition point of view for a right shoulder dry joint? So again, did lots of research, found out about hyaluronic acid as a supplement. And a few weeks later, she called me up and said, "Claudia, you're not going to believe what's happened to my face." She said, "My face is looking so much better." I was like, if I'd have created a product then, I would have been a millionaire by now. But yeah, so it really does help, but it also increases actually the synovial fluid between the joints. It is very, very good for increasing moisture in the skin.
Yes. And the ingredient you have though in the moisturizer holds more, because it's 1,000 times its weight, isn't it, hyaluronic acid in water. So it works as a humectant by attracting moisture from around the skin, isn't it? So your skin is a great thing for hydrating the skin. So anyone that has said they've got dry skin, then a hyaluronic acid, which is a multi-molecular type of product, will be more helpful than if it's just one level, because it's going to penetrate at different levels into the skin. But your beta-glucan rather, is more efficient than that, even so, isn't it? So that's when was that found out? It's quite a new type of
it's only about a year, 18 months ago,
isn't it? I remember that actually, because I think I've noticed it, and once you told me, I noticed it in a couple of other brands. And it's got CBD in it as well.
CBD to help calm inflammation.
Yes.
Very natural antioxidant, very helpful. What else has it got? It's got some neem oil. It's got vitamin E. So it's all very, very natural. But we just wanted to create something that was really effective.
And helps with skin barrier function. And repairing it, which is wonderful. Susan, have you got any other?
Yes, we've got Claudia here, and we've had so many comments about weight and weight gain in menopause.
Yes.
And a lot of that I know is hormonal. That are essentially menopause is such a massive metabolic shift that everything's slow. It's not about the hormones. Everything is slowing down. Yes, it's hormonally related, but there's this huge metabolic shift. And also we're more likely to put on weight around our middles because we're losing muscle, and also we produce a very weak form of estrogen from our body fat, from the fat in the centre of our bodies. And it's all very natural, but no one likes it.
No, but this is where stress management also plays a huge role, because there are 3 places where estrogen is produced. So you've got the ovaries, which are shutting down. You've got the body fat cells, as you mentioned, but you've also got the little adrenal glands who sit on top of the kidneys, and they produce our stress hormones and also some of our sex hormones. But the problem is, when we're in this fight or flight, immediate stress, that whole sex hormone production gets diverted. So the body goes, oh my gosh, we don't need more estrogen or progesterone. Let's make cortisol and adrenaline. So the more that we can do actually in terms of the mindfulness and the breathing and everything else, that will have a knock-on effect. I would say as well that food intolerances sometimes appear during menopausal years, I'm afraid to say, as with histamine intolerance comes up quite a lot as well. So it is worth investigating, worth looking into. And, some women find that reducing their carbs at night can make a difference. We've got to keep the protein going, but slightly reducing that carb intake at night. I'm not a fan of the keto or anything radical, but just slightly reducing at night can help.
And have you got, we're talking about sort of vaginal dryness and, when we, our sex drive can diminish. Are there foods that will help boost sex drive?
Yeah, you see, again, knowing our numbers, I would try and get your testosterone levels measured, because that is key for the va-va-voom libido side of things. I mean, there's lots, aren't there? There's quite a lot of gimmicky foods, I would say, like dates are supposed to increase sex drive, but I don't know how validated that research is. What do you
prepared earlier?
What do you think, Susan?
He's got a date for libido.
Like the Blue Peter show. But it's anchored down with peanut butter.
Healthy fats. I think so much of these issues around menopause and health comes down to not having enough protein. If we're getting protein, if we're building muscle, then other things start to work more efficiently, essentially. Rather than say, I need to eat dates or whatever. It's like actually get the basics right, get the substrate right.
There's not like a magic herbal tea or a drink, or, you know, or food that you could suddenly introduce and everyone's like, no, sadly, not yet.
Yeah. And you were saying, I remember going in, we did a class together and I was trying to work out the portion size. And we were talking about sort of working it out with body weight. And you were saying a computer mouse.
Oh yeah, I've got a silly way of remembering things. So basically, you could do a fist of carbohydrates, which you might want to have for breakfast and lunch, and you might want to reduce. And Lee's got her. Lee, let's see the computer mouse. And so we need like 2 of these. Well, so Lee's and my computer mouse for your vegetable portions, and then the protein should be the palm of your hand.
Yeah, on every plate, at every meal is what you need to be thinking about. Okay, so let me just see. Lots more comments coming in. Thank you so much, everyone. One-to-one with Claudia would be wonderful. Someone, Denise, just saying, been taking Mighty Green CBD drops for my dodgy knee. Osteoarthritis is noticeably better. Thank you, Claudia.
Oh, you're so welcome. Great.
Joe just saying, gosh, I would desperately like a one-to-one with Claudia. Well, you can just enter on our Facebook page by following the instructions. Just comment on what you think a food for brain health is, and the winner will be announced at midday on Friday. Genevieve saying, this is totally enlightening. I wish I'd known about Goldster years ago. That's wonderful. How do I get Claudia's Mighty Green, please?
Oh, mightygreen.co.uk.
Mightygreen.co.uk. So many women also find our libido is fiercely on the up. What do we think about that, everyone?
Ooh.
I say good. I say yippee is what I say about that. When mine finally went on the up, I thought this is fantastic. There's just, you know, I don't have to worry about contraception anymore. It's just, yeah, great. Whole new menopause revolution. Kerry just saying, I'm putting it down for the last 2 years of my possible procreation and my body surging. It's definitely strong around ovulation. Okay, so Kerry's still in perimenopause. And I'm single, she says. Good for you, Kerry. This is great stuff. Wonderful. Diane just saying, GP won't test testosterone and vitamin D, so unable to get as part of HRT. So
it's sadly the only way to get testosterone as HRT is privately.
Yes, that's right. It's
through bioidentical hormones. It's shocking, and I'm sure it's going to change. I would hope it's going to change.
Well, hopefully with all these sorts of conversations we're having and, you know, pushing forward these conversations, it will change. So just someone asking here, does marine collagen help?
Marine collagen, there are different types of collagen, and marine collagen is especially good for the hair, skin and nails, whereas the beef derived collagen is especially good for like gut healing and gut repair.
Oh, interesting.
Healing the microvilli. So it depends what your issue is.
Could you do both?
I wouldn't do both. I'd maybe alternate, open one, and then when you finish that, have another one, have a different kind.
Yes. Okay. Wonderful. Just make sure there's any more comments. This is Andrew just saying, Andrew, thank you for the sensual massage is good for getting the sex drive up. Yes, all good advice. All good advice, everybody. Anything else, Susan, before we let Claudia go?
Oh gosh, I tell you what just suddenly flashed into my mind when you said that about the massage was that some research was published last week that said that women who were given a foot massage by their partners had lower levels of hot flushes during menopause. And I thought, well, that's very nice, isn't it? If you can persuade your partners to give you a foot massage, you're probably going to feel happier and more relaxed and less stressed, and you probably are less likely to have a hot flush. But yet, that's not nutritionally related. But I thought if we, in terms of sort of libido and that kind of thing, why not?
Fabulous. And we're just saying, just started HRT patches last week and did get tested for vitamin D and iron deficiency too, luckily, because I was very low in them. So I got a prescription from my GP. So they're just testimony to getting these tests done, really looking after yourself, having this toolkit together to help yourself, surf through this transition. Can you repeat the collagen types to buy, or just type them in the comments, please? So Claudia, what was that? The collagen types again? It was marine or
marine collagen, marine peptides.
Marine peptides.
Versus bovine.
Versus bovine. Okay.
So the marine collagen is for the hair, skin and nails.
green contrast. That's good nails.
Which really does make a difference to dry legs.
Wow.
Yeah,
And
it
you
really
touched
does.
it for how long before you've noticed? Maybe 3 months.
A week, 2 weeks, you can see a difference.
Wow.
Yes.
That's brilliant. Fantastic. Claudia, as always, it's been a joy to learn more things from you. And of course, you can, join Claudia's classes. We offer 5 complimentary classes on Goldster, and then it's $9.99 a month. And you can join over 300 classes in a month. But Claudia's on twice a week. So, and remember to enter the competition on the Facebook page, and you can win a free one-to-one with Claudia. So what's not to love?
Thank you all so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. Bye, Claudia. Bye.
Bye. Oh, wonderful. Wasn't that insightful?
Yes, so interesting and also doable. I think that's the other thing we have to remember, that it's very easy to think, we're going to try all these different things, but actually just a few really targeted supplements and awareness of things like vitamin D, protein, etc. Is all you need. It doesn't have to be loads of kind of weird stuff.
Absolutely, totally. And our final guest, we're coming to the end, Susan, we're coming to the end, is Cathy Houghton. Now, Cathy is going to be new to many of you. She's going to be joining Goldster soon, so watch this space. Cathy Houghton, are you there?
I am. Hello.
Hi, Cathy. Hi.
Yeah,
Well,
to meet you.
welcome. So Cathy Houghton is a health and movement coach to women from pre to post menopause. She helps women find peaceful eating, balanced well-being and energizing movement. Her specialisms are weight loss, disordered eating recovery and movement for menopausal wellness. So welcome. So good to see you.
Thank you.
And it will be we're going to talk a little bit about the mindset component, aren't we, Susan?
Yes, exactly. So Cathy, we started this session at 2:00 talking about the sort of 3 elements, 3 paths to kind of dealing with menopause and good health through menopause and beyond. And we were talking about movement. So we've talked to Tim and Jude about exercise and Pilates. We've talked to Claudia about nutrition. And so so that's the meals element, and then you mindset. So it's kind of movement, meals, and mindset essentially. How we sort of get our minds on board with the changes that we're experiencing and kind of move through the fear we have and this sort of, the difficulties that menopause can bring. So what do you find? How do we kind of bring our minds with us and our positivity with us on the journey?
Cathy frozen. She looks like Cathy's frozen, doesn't it?
Yes, just
Blasting
out. Really long question. Yeah.
Now you see it, now you don't. It's that whole sort of mindset piece is so relevant, isn't it? And I think also, because we were talking earlier, Susan, about the brain fog aspect, and that actually when that first kicks in, it can really sort of erode that sense of confidence. I remember actually even Davina McCall was talking about this, that she was on a live show and she just remembered someone sort of talking to her, but she could see that they were saying something but couldn't sort of understand what they were saying. She could see the word. She wasn't computing the information. And I certainly found that myself, actually. Or I would just go into a room and think, no, gone. No idea what I was here for, or what that person just said. And often I would say to my children, if they tell me something, I'd go upstairs and they'd ask me, if I'd done the thing I was supposed to do. No, gone. Goes off over there. Which I'm being slightly light-hearted about it, but actually,
but it's disturbing. It's upsetting. It's, of course, we all joke about it. Lost my keys again, but it is disturbing and upsetting, and that is the issue that we have to remember, that we've got these physiological changes, but also they bring with them psychological changes. Because if you are in that experience, like you're saying, your kids asked you to do stuff, and then of course you haven't done it, and they're like, "Oh, Mum, you used to do that," and then that really is what happened to me. That's what. Then that starts to erode your self-confidence, and then that's a bit of a vicious circle, because then you're less likely to be functioning sharply, because your confidence is draining away, and so that makes it harder, which is why we have to work on our mindset and have to understand. And now someone was saying in the comments, has said the 1,300 comments that we got to start with. I have to write post-its and stick them to my cupboard door. Forgot to pick my son up yesterday morning, went right out of my head. And you say, actually, you know what? Writing post-it notes is a really good idea. Set reminders and timers to pick up the kids from school or whatever it is. It's fine. It's not an admission of failure. It's a coping mechanism while your brain is going through this extraordinary large change. So don't feel that it's a failure if you've got post-it notes and reminders, or that you forget something. Your brain is functioning on 30% less energy.
Yes. And that's where you were saying, actually, for the brain fog part and the memory part, that's where the sleep again comes into it, that we go back to that part, because of course that's going to help the mindset, isn't it? And I was just actually looking through some of the comments here, just about a lady here who's a teacher, and the brain fog was so bad and she got no support at the school she was working, and so she's had to leave her job. And actually, there's a lot of statistics, although women over 50 are growing in the workforce, it's also a demographic of people that have had struggles with brain fog in the workplace because there's not been the open conversations about it. And I remember actually delivering a corporate workshop around the menopause and therapeutic things we could do, but in the workplace to support people. And that was being open about it and being able to say, actually, hang on a minute, I just need to get myself together because I can't remember what you're saying. I'm not thinking clearly right now. In the same way as we'd say, actually, hold on a minute, just give me a minute. I'm feeling very hot. And these conversations being open, not only for other women who are younger, who maybe don't understand what that transition is about, but also for men. Because there's been lots of comments here about, men don't understand and they don't believe we're going through it. And also other people's, a man commenting here, when my wife would forget things, I didn't realize what she was going through until I had to sort of learn what this was about.
Is that because it's not talked about? That this is the problem. A very good friend of mine works in a boys' school. She's one of the secretaries to the headmaster, and she has made it her mission to say menopause every single day that she's at school, because the headmaster, boys' school, is like, oh. But actually, because she's saying it, other women in the school are starting to say it, and the boys hear it, and suddenly it's a word that they're used to. So if you can get to a place within your workplace where you can say, actually, I am feeling really hot, I'm just going to pause for a moment, or you're going to have to say that again. Yeah, I mean, it is hard. And again, on the original comments, someone's saying, I had to give up a job I've been doing for 33 years due to severe anxiety. It does have an enormous impact, which is why we have to keep talking about it and keep addressing these issues and keep going back to this sense of, what can I do to feel better? How can I understand this is just a phase? It's not me. It's not who I am all the time. How can I get help, and how can I help myself? It's you always asking those questions, always thinking about what can be done.
It's so true. It's sort of, I call it sort of from transition to recreation, sort of rather, I think it's a nice way of looking at it. Someone was saying here, menopause plus brain fog plus interview equals humiliating embarrassment. Anna, yes, I can understand what you're saying there, and thank you for sharing that, because I think that's when we can, someone else sees that in the comment and they've been through that, then we can understand we're not alone. There are lots of other people who are experiencing something similar. And someone just saying, I had to leave my job earlier this year due to menopause and diverticulitis.
Oh, yeah, that's a bowel issue.
Okay, right. Working together to make me feel like a zombie. I had insomnia and a brain fog, permanent diarrhea, massage amongst other symptoms. It was awful. Oh, that sounds so challenging, doesn't it, Susan?
Yes.
Really challenging.
Really, really hard. And I hope you are able to resolve those issues and and find a better, happier place to be, because hopefully they are resolvable.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's also when you get those layering of symptoms, isn't it? Maybe if you've got another chronic condition and then you get the menopause on top.
Yes, we were saying at the beginning with the lady with lupus, that the one exacerbates the other, unfortunately, when it comes to chronic conditions.
Totally. And also some people commenting, they had challenges with mental health, already had sort of generalized anxiety and were still dealing with that. And then the menopause came, so it was sort of exacerbated that. And Kerry just saying here, this is brilliant. I'm here very much for my own benefit, but also because I'm making noise about peri at school where I work too, about the perimenopause. I mean, this is great, Kerry, because when you start just talking about it, and normalize it. So just people aren't then taken aback. It's like we're talking about pelvic floor, we're talking about vaginal dryness, we're talking about low sex drive. These are all things that are part of the human experience. Unless we bring out and have adult conversations about them and think of solutions that we can all get together and support each other. Otherwise, they sort of, they're sort of hidden under the radar, and there's a secrecy about them. So Sue was just saying, I started forgetting my words in conversation during my menopause, and now in my early 70s, I still have this problem. Any thoughts on that, Susan, from Sue in the early 70s?
Well, there are lots and lots of things. The most important is to think how debilitating is it? Hopefully, it's not causing you massive problems day to day. Really important that, as we talked about earlier, that you're getting good quality sleep, and also that you're allowing yourself time to rest, that you give yourself time to do nothing. Throughout our lives, particularly as women, we really push ourselves to keep going, to do stuff, to do what's needed, and actually taking time to rest, time for ourselves is important too. Just time to do nothing on one hand, and also time perhaps stimulate our brains with something new. We talked earlier about novelty, new things that keep our neurons firing, and we grow new neurons. So anything we do that's new, and that can be learning a new language, which is obviously a huge thing, or it can be walking a different route with your dog. It doesn't matter, but anything that's new is stimulating to the brain. And so that's creating what's called cognitive reserve, which is building up extra layers of neurons, so that if one layer stops working, you've got a backup, you've got a back route that the thoughts can go, essentially, and they'll still work. So that's really helpful. And also making sure that you're getting good nutrition for your brain. So that is omega-3s we were talking about earlier with Claudia, really important from oily fish if you eat fish, or from a marine algae supplement if you don't eat fish. But fish really is the best source. And when I say oily fish, I mean smash fish, which stands for salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines, and herring.
Oh, really? I've never heard of that. Smash.
Salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines, herring. Those are the oily fish that are really high in omega-3 fatty acids, which are great for the brain. Really
tinned.
Yeah, tin sardines, so cheap. I mean, you get a tin for what, 50p, 60p?
Yes.
And you want the cheap ones with the bones in, because that gives you calcium, which is so important. We haven't really talked an enormous amount about bone health, but it's so important for bone health to get enough calcium, because our bones weaken beyond menopause. So a cheap tin of sardines.
So are they high in protein or not?
Yeah, and they're high in protein.
Are they high in protein?
Yeah,
and when you mash them, do the bones mash down to the point where you can't taste them? Or you do.
You have to just mash them onto a piece of wholemeal toast, or with the salad or something like that. Yeah, it's such a good lunch when you don't want to spend too much time.
Wow, I'm going to get that. I'm going to get some sardines now.
Because they cook forever, so you've always got them in the cupboard.
Wonderful. So let me just hear. So someone here just saying, we have a weekly local female hormone deficiency support group, which has helped many of us. I had always suffered from UTIs. As a result of a talk by Professor Chris Harding, urologist, I learnt of the research that has been done into UTIs. I've been prescribed Hiprex which is an antiseptic tablet, which has helped stop these UTIs. Please ask your GP about this if you suffer with them, as when we need to empower ourselves by learning about our bodies as individuals. We know ourselves better than anyone else. Thank you for an amazing session. Well, thank you so much, Fee, for joining us. Really good. We're just hoping that Cathy can make it back. There she is.
She is. There she is.
Can you hear us?
I
Can you hear us?
hear you, yes. Can you hear me?
We can hear
I
you.
don't know what happened there.
Don't worry.
That was
Everyone's
challenging
had
for the
good
mind.
connections, don't worry at all. But we were talking about mindset and menopause and how we bring our minds with us, how we stay positive through this experience. What do you think, Cathy?
Yes. I think it's incredibly challenging if you're getting a load of menopausal symptoms and you're losing sleep as well. I mean, just functioning, getting through the day is the priority, isn't it, really? So then to think about how can I improve this situation, how can I bring in some self-care here as well, it's really difficult. So I think what we need to do is keep it as simple as we possibly can. I heard you saying just now about like writing notes for ourselves, repetition and all that kind of thing. I think we need to go back to basics. And there's one thing about the wellness industry that sometimes I think it can create this sense that there's so much more we can do, and self-care in itself can become a thing to do on the to-do list, and that's really stressful, and that's the last thing that we need. So we have to strip it right back, make it really simple, think about what do I need, never mind what everyone else needs, never mind what I should be doing, but what do I need right now for me? I think having, sort of linking the mindset that is friendly, comfortable, perhaps gentle to ourselves really is self-care, isn't it? Because then that helps us put everything else into place.
I think you make a really relevant point there, actually, because I think one of the things that came up for me over the menopause was the point of self-compassion, which I think can sort of be lost sometimes in that sort of, as we're going through this transition, maybe feel a bit frustrated that we can't remember something, or that the body's changing, or that I'm not communicating with my partner because I'm not sure what's going on with myself, and my confidence maybe feels a bit low. But that self-compassion, how can I have an internal narrative that is friendly, as you say, towards myself, and that is patient and caring, so that I can just take it in these small incremental steps rather than sort of expecting a big transformation over a quick period of time. So I think that's a really relevant point, Cathy. Is that what you found with your clients that you've seen, that component? What's the most common component that comes up that, around the sort of mindset, emotional roller coasters of highs and lows with moods, that kind of thing? What's your sort of experience of people you've been with, seeing?
Absolutely. The language, the words that some of my clients use when they're talking about themselves.
Yeah.
You wouldn't talk to your friend like that. Women are so tough on themselves. They really, really are. Very negative. So a lot of my work is around food and eating patterns, and I hear my clients saying things, like I'm rubbish at this. I can't control myself, and they don't realize they're saying it. So when we break the conversation down, and when we talk about that, and they don't even know that is the thought pattern that's going round and round their head. So we can sort of say, well, if you tell yourself you can't control yourself around food, or you can't do this, or you're rubbish at that, then you're just reinforcing that, aren't you?
Oh, look like we've lost Cathy.
We've lost
Sounded a bit like a Dalek was coming in, didn't it?
Yeah, but yes, I think what she was saying there about that we're not kind to ourselves. We expect so much of ourselves. We get caught in this trap of trying to help other people all the time and be there for other people. We're not really kind of there for ourselves enough. And we need to be, as we've spent nearly 2.5 hours talking about all the things that are happening in our bodies, all this extraordinary experience that we go through, and we need us to be on side. That's really important.
I think it's like you were saying earlier about, estrogen provides us with this protective cloak, but we need to do that more for ourselves with everything that we absorb in our environment, the way we take care of ourselves, the internal narrative that we have, who we invite into our lives, how we, speak to ourselves, how we take care of ourselves. You talk about, actively relaxing, and I love that expression, because it's almost like we live in a culture where relaxing is a privilege, where you talk about actively relaxing and investing in your sleep, because that is part of your, what's going to help you feel better. And it's these sorts of priorities that help us create this sort of protective cloak, isn't it?
Exactly. And culturally, we don't value relaxation. We don't value sleep. We all remember all that's about sleep is for wimps, and actually they're so vitally important to us and to our well-being that that we have to kind of give ourselves these gifts, essentially, that's what they are. And it's hard when bosses, families, partners, etc., all putting demands upon us, but it's something we need to be doing.
Yeah, it's like Tim was saying, it's when you're investing in the time resistance training, it's like a body armor, and all of these things that I hope you're sort of extracting what is helpful from you. You can create your own kind of body armor and your own emotional toolkit and protective cloak that will help buffer as you transition through these times. And part of that is that internal narrative, and the words we say to ourselves create an emotional response. It's often, if you've been around someone who's always talking about how awful everything is and it's just so terrible, or catastrophizing about everything, we can end up sort of coming away from that situation and feeling that ourselves. Whereas, sort of being mindful of the words we say to ourselves and how we describe things, of sort of having a broader perspective, not catastrophizing about things as they happen, I think is a real power in that. Would you say, Cathy? Oh, we can't hear you, Cathy. There's no volume. We can't hear you. No, still can't hear you. Wonder, Ben, if you can get Cathy's volume up. But someone's just saying here, oh, she's gone again. It's like the amazing disappearing show. So someone was just saying here, how long does it take to get through all these symptoms? We had this conversation earlier.
Yes,
way, didn't we, Susan?
Some of it they will go. They will reduce statistically. They will reduce. Some of it is learning to manage them, and learning what works. We've talked so much today about how exercise can help, how breath work can help, how good nutrition can help, how mindset can help. Learning to manage them. Learning. I can feel I'm getting hot. Right, this is what I'm going to do. That's really part of it. And then talking to a doctor, seeking medical support. If your symptoms are really bad and really debilitating, then there is medication for menopause symptoms, and it's called HRT. It's a highly effective medication. It's not going to make you live forever, but it is a very good medication for menopause symptoms, and you don't have to start taking it before your final period. It is something, if you've got ongoing symptoms, you can talk to your doctor about.
Yeah. Someone was just also saying here, my lovely daughter is so patient with me and props me up when I'm struggling. I'm a single mummy, so she knows all about the menopause. And actually, Annie, you make a really relevant point here, because I think that the people who we have in our life as we go through this transition is really important. The relationships we develop, the social connection we have, because circling back to what we were talking about at the very beginning, about emotional needs, about understanding, we have a need for safety and security, autonomy and control, connection. a sense of accomplishment, a sense of purpose in life. You know, so those relationships that we have, whether we have a partner, the communication we have with them as we're going through this, and if that is difficult to have, you know, setting up a plan really to be able to communicate what you're going through. You know, because that was some of the other things that have come up in my therapy room, is that communicating when maybe your partner is irritated with the symptoms that you're having because they don't understand them, you know, and it's being able to have those sort of important conversations, Susan, don't you think?
Yeah. I think that comment on what you're saying, Lee, makes a really good point, that menopause doesn't just impact one person.
Yes. Yes.
It can impact a whole family. It can impact a whole work team.
Yes.
We don't just owe it to ourselves to deal with it. We owe it to other people. I'm saying deal with it, but to look after ourselves and seek the best for ourselves. That's really the message. We don't have to make it perfect, but we do. But doing what we can to manage it, because of the knock-on impact on other people, and that's also why it's really important that other people, men, children, colleagues, etc., understand what is being experienced.
And I think that, you know, just to sort of wrap up, so coming in the last couple of minutes, is, you know, I think with the mindset piece, sort of therapeutic point, is, you know, when we can understand about the breathing, about having protocols in place that we know help us relax more, just calm the emotional arousal. It's also sort of thinking, well, you know, if I was to wake up tomorrow morning and I would be in a more positive mindset about this, what would be happening? You know, and start to be sort of quite solution focused and use your imagination to sort of see yourself getting up in the morning and say, well, what, you know, how would I be walking? How would I be breathing? Even by 10%, I could improve the way I'm viewing these symptoms, or if I'm feeling a bit hijacked by them, and sort of map out a plan so that you can sort of help yourself reach a more positive mindset about this transition and a space for creation. What would I like this next part of my life to be like? What can I create? What would give me a new sense of purpose?
Yes.
And start to sort of map that out. And that can be hugely powerful in moving us towards more of a solution-focused plan, if you like.
Yes, and what we have to remember is that menopause can be an incredibly positive time. It's ironic and awful that there can be so many symptoms to deal with at a time of incredible renewal and growth. For us as women, we can be doing all sorts of things. For a lot of women, their 50s are their times when and 60s and beyond, when they really start to fly. So it's this sort of yin and yang the whole time, that we might have this
transition, isn't it?
Yeah, but at the same time, we are transitioning. It almost feels like we're transitioning into who we're meant to be, because what Cathy read. Cathy was just saying that the years post-menopause can be very powerful and very positive, and that it's almost like we as we transition through menopause, we can transition to be who we're meant to be, because we've been so chained to this hormonal cycle every single month that when that stops, we're not this slave to hormones anymore. We're us again, and that, I think, it can be very exciting and very powerful, as long as our health is good. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. It can be such an age of change and empowerment, and a sense of, now it's a woman's time to do what she wants to do. She may have spent years, decades looking after other people, maybe younger, maybe older, but as we go through, it's kind of like a second coming of age, I suppose, really, isn't it? After puberty being the first one.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. And that in itself is so positive, rather than, I know so many of us going through all these difficult symptoms, to focus on actually the positives here and what is good about this, and what it really means for the future as well. I think is a fantastic way to sort of bring us back to the fact that we can take charge maybe in some ways now, and really, really look after ourselves in a way that perhaps we haven't had time or capacity to do before.
Yeah.
And if you were going to sort of give people 3 tips on things they could do to help improve their mindset around this transition, what would they be?
I would say start saying no to people sometimes, prioritize themselves.
Interesting, love it.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think try and move away. Just before I got cut off before, we were talking about catastrophic thinking. So that all or nothing thinking, I think is really not helpful at all. So if we can have a little bit of flexibility around our mindset, again, some gentleness, but things aren't always black and white. And if we can kind of go with the flow, be a little bit more flexible, I think that's really helpful. And I think the third thing perhaps is to let go of the idea that we need to be perfect in everything we do, and just to us trying to do the best we can. Perfectionism isn't helpful, and I think a lot of us were raised to try and be as perfect as we can, and a lot of the time for other people pleasing perhaps, if you like. So again, and that goes around to the saying no sometimes as well. So can we actually try to be imperfect, deliberately imperfect sometimes, and just do the best we can for ourselves?
Absolutely. Someone was just saying here, get a cat, it helps.
I have a cat, it does help, yes.
Oh, it certainly does. And thank you so much. Not many people talk about this. Someone was just saying, and a great session, thank you. Anything else, Cathy? So we're coming up to the end of our time. Anything else you would like to share that maybe around the sort of I know sort of the weight gain aspect of this, and women sort of talking about feeling they sort of carry the weight around their middle. Do you find there's any sort of area there where you help people? Is there a sort of disordered eating element ever in comfort food, things like that?
I think that sometimes if we can learn to accept a little bit about what's going on now, we are different people. Our bodies have, every 7 years, every cell in our body has changed, isn't it? So we are literally different people to how we were pre-menopause, and to stop comparing ourselves perhaps to how we used to be in our 20s or what worked in our 20s, and accept where we are now. And that doesn't mean we don't want to change. That doesn't mean we can't have change, but perhaps to realize we're coming from a different place now. And if we can at least have some acceptance of what's going on, rather than fight it so negatively all the time, because that's really draining. That's really exhausting. And again, it goes hand in hand with beating ourselves up over that, in that mindset. So a little bit of, okay, this is where we are. This is what we've got to work with. Let's try and move forward positively, rather than back to the past, and sort of take from this person I am now. I think that can be quite helpful sometimes. It may always be what women want to do, because so many women still strive to be that person they were decades ago, but maybe that can't be anymore. Maybe that might never be quite the same again. We are people.
Cathy, your volume, your audio's, can you hear that, Susan? The audio's static. Because can you hear, Susan? I can't hear very clearly.
Yeah, well, I think Cathy's making a really great point there about acceptance that we may not be the person that we were when we were in our 20s. We may have moved on. We've been through this incredible process of change, and accepting that and accepting who we are is really important, and it's really powerful, and it will really help kind of move us into this new phase of our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally. A lovely way to end a 2.5 hour live stream. And I'll just check the if there's any more comments, just some thank yous, and thank you all of you for sticking with us. We had lots of people stay on this live for a very long time. And really wonderful for you to spend some time with us. Remember, Goldster offers 5 complimentary classes, and then it's £9.99 a month, and you can access over 300 classes. And that was Cathy Houghton. She will be new on Goldster. Sorry, we had some problems there with the transmission. But Susan, as always, it was a joy to share this time with you.
Thank you. You've been amazing holding it all together as everyone's coming and going. And yeah, it's so interesting and so many fascinating points here from our audience. And I just wish everybody well and look after yourselves and prioritize yourselves. Yeah, that's always my message.
Absolutely. And Anna, if your eyebrows are going grey, then I do a class on Goldster called Connected Beauty, and we cover things like that. So you can, that is easy to sort out. Just lots of thank yous. Thank you so much. Very helpful and informative. Thank you so much. We love to hear your comments. Send us some thumbs up and some hearts. That always helps as well. helps the live get out there. And if you watch this at a later date, please put any comments for us below, and we will endeavour to get back to you. And thank you so much for your time, and take care of yourselves, and big hearts to you. All right, everybody.
Take care. Thanks, Lee. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye.